Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenet Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District in Lakewood, Colorado. And joining me from his home in Rapid City, South Dakota, my friend and co-host, you know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, how you doing, my friend? Oh, my God. We had a great weekend seeing May Pang. Oh, that was amazing.
That was pretty cool to see all her candid photography of John Lennon and to sit down and actually converse with her face to face. She gave us a lot of time.
Yeah, she did. I loved it. It was amazing.
Did I hear you ask if you could come stay with her, though?
I did. You never know that sometimes they say yes. Well, she said, come and visit me in New York. And I'm like,
I was slinking away at that part. I thought, oh my God, he's going to try to move in with her.
Oh. I don't think my wife would let me. So,
did you see the expression on her face when you asked if you could come stay with her?
She seemed to, no, she didn't like, she had like,
I think it was just one of those niceties that, people
I would think so.
Say like, oh yeah, anytime you're in New York, come visit or whatever. And then you just jumped on that bandwagon and boom, there was fear in her eyes. No, it was fun. It was nice to meet her. It was nice to experience that. You had your friend Tommy with you.
Yeah, that was great.
I had my daughter Kyra along, who's a huge Beatles fan, and just a nice afternoon in the gallery there at Bit Factory.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I capped my weekend by buying a Lorenzo Chavez piece.
Really?
Over at the Bend Gallery. So, yeah, it was nice.
You're going to have to show me what you bought.
I will. So I'm excited for tonight, though. This is going to be fun.
I am extremely excited. Before we get into it, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenet Podcast, our Tenet Podcast Facebook page, and of course, our website, tenetpodcast.com. All right, we are absolutely honored to talk with our next guest. He is a painter, photographer, and mixed media artist. You can check out his work at his website, warwicksaint.com, and you can follow him on Instagram at Warwick Saint. Saint, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good.
Fantastic.
Nice to see your face again.
Good
We had a lovely conversation about a week ago.
I remember. Yes. But we had to cut it short because I didn't want to, waste good content when it wasn't being recorded.
There you go.
Yeah, you had a lot. We had a great conversation. And yeah, I had to cut it off because it's like, man, we should be doing the podcast right now. Where are you zooming in from this evening?
From Trout Creek, Montana.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, and don't blink because you'll miss it. Don't blink. We have 100 acres of wilderness property, and so just been camping out here for the summer. When I say camping, we have a cabin and an art studio and a wood-burning sauna. And this is where we've been for the last few months since May, and we'll be here through Thanksgiving and then back to Miami.
Man, you're doing it right. You're living life right. Splitting your time between Montana in the summer and Miami in the wintertime.
That seems to be the case. It's pretty good.
You're originally from South Africa, right?
I was born in South Africa, left when I was 5 to go and live in Stockholm with my mother, and she was dating a photographer by the name of Steve Hyland. My earliest memories are living in the photo studio in Stockholm and watching all these photo shoots happening, and went back to South Africa when I was 8 and finished my schooling there and did my degree in philosophy and art history. And as soon as I was done with my degree, I set sail for London.
What was it like growing up in South Africa?
Well, I mean, I grew up under apartheid, so it was kind of skewed in that regard because although I was a white South African, there was, when I would travel as a teenager overseas, I'd be embarrassed about where I'd be from because I would assume that everybody would think that I'm racist or, because people have judgments, Meantime, you're just a kid growing up, living your life. So, there was a little bit of, I would say, embarrassment. And that being said, my family were quite liberal. And I experienced a lot of nature and a lot of wildlife. Although I lived in a big city in Johannesburg, I would get out to the bush a lot. And Cape Town was very much part of my childhood. We had a little holiday house in Cape Town, right next to the ocean. So I think it influenced my formative years in terms of the landscape and the grandness of Africa and experiencing the African sky and the African light and African culture and just being so close to the wild like that and having these experiences as a kid, I think is kind of priceless. So it was a privileged upbringing, but as I said, it had a good dose of embarrassment and a little bit of shame around it, the collective shame as well. But yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I went to a good school and it was very sporty and just a lot of outdoor stuff. So, I remember doing a walking safari for 10 days when I was 11 years old, just walking in the bush and digging for your own water and sleeping under the stars and having to watch the fire at night and had a guide with us with a gun. And I would hear lions roaring and leopards fighting off cheetahs at a giraffe kill, 50 meters away from where we were sleeping. And, these kinds of experiences are pretty amazing to have. And so I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for my upbringing.
So Montana isn't too far of a stretch considering how you grew up, right?
That's what I often say to myself and some friends. I'm like, it's about as close as you can get to the bush being in the United States. I mean, we have mountain lions and moose and grizzlies and everything, you name it, it's right here. So yes, very similar. Just a lot colder.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine, I did a 10-day stint of hiking and camping up in the Bighorns of Wyoming, and but we didn't have lions. We had mountain lion or cougars and mountain lions, but no big game like lions. And I can't even imagine. I guess when you grow up in it, it's not that different. Well, it's no different, I guess, growing up in Montana either with the grizzlies and mountain lions and everything. But yeah, that just seems horrifying.
Yeah. Well, you actually, I tell you something, it's like when you are in the bush, especially on the walking safaris, and you kind of walk off to take a pee or whatever in the bushes, and you're kind of like standing there and you're like, I could be someone's breakfast right now, someone's dinner. And just to realize one's place in the food chain and realize how vulnerable we are in that environment, because although it's as natural as it can be, but we actually foreigners because we generally live in cities and houses and stuff like that. So to have that experience of just being like, wow, like I am pretty defenseless right now and I could get taken out. It is an experience that not very many people have. And I think it's a really humbling experience. So I've had that experience a few times.
Yeah. People in Miami are not thinking about that sort of thing at all.
Definitely not. Definitely not. But Miami, it's drive-by shootings and God knows what else. So I mean, hey, pick your poison, man.
There you go.
A different type of wild game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a different perspective on things. I think a unique perspective when you grow up in that kind of environment. I grew up in Alaska, so kind of very similar to, Montana where you live. I have that thought too. It gives you a feeling that you better be on your game, and you better be somewhat self-sufficient as well, which I know a lot of people that I've met from Montana have that mindset, right?
Yeah I would call it a sort of a relaxed focus, that there's a sort of an awareness that you have to have, and it always takes a couple of days. When I go from the city into the bush, it takes 2 or 3 days to sort of get acclimated, but eventually you do actually relax. But there's this awareness that you have, because you're always looking and listening and hearing, and it's just it's actually a beautiful. It's kind of like a meditation in a way.
I like that.
Really nice, really lovely state of being to experience nature like that.
You were engaged from a very early age in the art world and had some very unique experiences. Your mom was a model, and
that's correct.
Your dad had his own graphic design firm or agency. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah. Called Grapple Group.
Talk about how those experiences informed you as a child and kind of set you on this path?
Yeah. Well, I never remembered my father and my mother ever being together. They separated when I was 2 and got divorced shortly after that. And then he went to live overseas. He worked for a couple of agencies in Paris and then opened up his own agency in Detroit and London and San Francisco. So I didn't actually grow up with my father at all. And he came back to South Africa when I was 12 and was pretty absent for most of the following 5 years. He only lived another 5 years. He died when I was 17. He got tragically killed in a car accident. And it just happened at the time when I was building a relationship with him. That being said, there were, quite a few holidays that I would work in his graphic design agency as a teenager. And he would just throw me in the mix and just be like, okay, we got this food chain out of Australia. They do pasta, this and that, design some logos. And I would just do it. And I'd sit in the meetings with the client, and he would present my designs to the clients. And I was only 14 or 15 years old. I thought oh, this is pretty cool, So I got exposed to the graphic design part, but it was more sort of sporadic because he wasn't around as much. I think most of my upbringing, because I was with my mother, I was way more influenced, I would say, by her and the world that she was in, which, she was a model when I was a small child. And then in my teens, she became a stylist. And all her boyfriends were photographers because she was this like super hot young woman. She had me when she was 22. So kind of when I was 6, 7, she was only 29 or 30. So, the boyfriends were numerous, and most of them were photographers. And my earliest memories are watching her on set and watching her walk the runway, walk the fashion down the runway, and just basically, I would say that it was just a period of osmosis, because the boyfriends were kind of like father figures that would come through, although a lot of them were temporary. She ended up actually marrying a photographer with the same name as my father, actually, which was kind of bizarre. My father's name was Ken, and she ended up marrying a guy called Ken. So it was weird because my father and my stepfather were both Ken. And what was even kind of weirder is my mother's name is Deborah, and my father remarried another woman by the name of Deborah.
That's crazy.
So it was just this kind of weird, like 2 Deborah Saints, and there was Ken, my stepfather, there was a photographer, and Ken, my father, that was a graphic designer. And it was kind of a little weird. But to come back to your point, there was a lot of evenings spent talking about photography, and I'd go on photo shoots, and I'd be working with my father in the holidays, and a lot of other holidays I'd be, my mother would be doing these photo shoots for these big hotel chains in South Africa. And I would go and join the photo shoot and hang out with all the models and help the photographer and sort of be a third assistant to the other assistants and just get my hands in the game, so to speak. And then when my dad died, and when I was 17, my mom was going on this big 3-week shoot to Mauritius for this big hotel chain. And I had to go with her because my father just passed, and the client let me go. And that's when I kind of threw myself into photography proper. I assisted for 3 or 4 weeks on that job and started getting pretty good at assisting and loading. Back in those days, most photographers shot on a Hasselblad, and it was all roll film, right? So the assistant would be loading film as quickly as the photographer would shoot it. You'd have to load it and mark it, and every shot with a marker, and kind of have your whole system down. So I got really good at that. And then the photographer on that shoot would come back to South Africa. Instead of him bringing in an assistant from England, he had to pay for the flight. He would just use me in South Africa. So I started assisting when I was 17, finished school, and studied art history and philosophy. And then as soon as I was done with that, I actually moved to London to work with that same photographer and to start my career, because I realized that's what I wanted to be. After my dad died, I kind of had this choice of either going the graphic design route or the photography route. Or at least that was the choice that I thought I had. I didn't really want to be seen. I remember at the time thinking, my father was such a well-known graphic designer, and he won all these awards and all these top awards and had these agencies. And I just kind of wanted to forge my own path, really. And I didn't really want to be seen sort of rising up through his shadow of graphic design. And photography was super cool, still is super cool, although it's very different now. And we can certainly talk about that. But back then, the photographer was the magician, because you'd shoot on Polaroid and shoot on film and nobody would know what you'd get till 3 or 4 days later. And it was a real thing. You really had to learn your lighting. You really had to learn the craft and the technique. And I was really, really into it. And I bought myself a darkroom and basically would just go to university and study art history and philosophy and then come home in the evenings and print in the darkroom till the early hours of the morning, listening to Pink Floyd super loud. And that's how I started.
Sounds like my childhood as far as listening to Pink Floyd loudly.
That's the best. My favorite band of all time. Like
no doubt.
Epic anthems, Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here and stuff. I also listen to a bit of Pavarotti, which is kind of weird.
Oh, yeah, that is a little bit of a switch there, but that's all right. Nothing wrong with that.
Totally.
Put you in a different headspace, right?
Totally, man. Totally.
So I got a little side question for you. So how has learning philosophy influenced you as an artist?
That's a fucking great question. Excuse my language. I would say it's, well, when people would ask me back in the day, why are you studying philosophy? Like, what are you going to use it for? I would be like, well, think, exclamation point. Use it to think. It really teaches you how to think. And that was something around philosophy that I loved. It's like this deep dive, and not so much into finding answers, but to finding questions you can ask. And that inquiry for me was really, really powerful. And I didn't think I would ever major in philosophy. I thought I'd just do it for a year, but I loved it so much, I ended up majoring in it. And I think as a result, it's sort of given me this mindset of inquiry and constantly asking myself, where I'm at, where I'm going, where I've been. I think it's put me in a mindset of constant inquiry and the constant pursuit of, I would say, reaching my best potential. And the reason I think that particular piece relates to philosophy is, in philosophy, there's no answers. There's only inquiry and building arguments. But for every argument, there's a counter argument. And I think it's that mindset that's influenced me in terms of my photography and my art and just generally how I live my life. I'm almost 52 now, and I'm constantly learning new things, and I love learning new things because I'm curious. And I think philosophy helped build the curiosity muscle. So yeah, I highly recommend, if you're into it, just go for it, because philosophy is an awesome subject. It really is.
Yeah, I think that was a fantastic answer too, by the way.
Thanks.
I just love that.
So I studied philosophy. See, I studied philosophy.
That's right. But you're absolutely right. It really helps you, like, if you hear an argument, thinking, okay, what's the counter argument to this? Because everything's not black and white, and there's you got to really kind of evaluate everything from multiple sides. So that like you said, that gives you foundation for that, and that's really cool. So
yeah, and talking about black and white, I never use black in my art.
Ah.
Sometimes I use white to mix into the colors, but I never use black, not once. So
really,
it's true. It's not black and white.
Oh. So you grew up around photography, around photographers, seeing how they worked and all that. But at what point did you really get the bug? And did you get a camera in your hands and start doing it on your own?
Well, the first time I officially picked up a camera to shoot was when I was on safari with my father in the Kruger National Park. I was 14 years old. And that was the first time, he gave me a camera and he was like, go for it, shoot. And I would, I wasn't really that interested in even shooting the big game, so to speak. I would find other compositions around the campsites and go in on a bug and go macro photography. And then in the car, I'd be doing blurred shots out of the car window. And that was the first time I remember picking up the camera for myself. I would say that when I actually got bitten by the bug, so to speak, well, I suppose there's two ways I could answer this question. The first being is that I went to a boys' school an all-boys school. And I had a girlfriend that was at the art school in Johannesburg. And she was probably about an hour's hour by bicycle away. And because I was president of the Photographic Society, I had the keys to the darkroom. And I would sneak her in the morning. She used to take a day off school, like she'd bunk out of school. I would sneak her in the morning and put her in the darkroom. And she would like be doing her own photography and printing. And then in the breaks and stuff, I'd go and make out with her in the darkroom and then go back to class. So that's when I was like, photography is cool, man. This is awesome. Like all my, I had this like little like dark secret in the darkroom, So that was, I suppose that's one way of answering it. but I think to kind of keep it more direct to answer your question, I think it was when I started assisting properly with this photographer that my mom was working with, because the shoots were so much fun. And he was a great guy to work with. And I loved being in the mix. And we were always off traveling to some amazing location and staying in these amazing hotels and being on the beach at sunrise in the morning and shooting these hot models. And I was just like, this is brilliant. This is what I want to do. So it was pretty clear when I was about 18, after a couple of assisting jobs, that's what I wanted to do. And then, of course, now you're a photographer and you have a camera, then, you can pretty much do what you want. So I would invite friends over to come to my house, and I'd photograph them, and I'd do nudes of some of my girlfriends, and just loved the how all encompassing it is. I remember thinking that at the time of like, wow, like I can get a beautiful girl, I can take nude pictures of her, I can make art out of it, I can light it beautifully, make it look beautiful, and have a great time doing it. And then afterwards, I get to have all this time in the darkroom processing the film and listening to Pink Floyd and making all the prints, and you end up with a result. So you have this experience that's such a great experience unto itself, and then you get to record the experience and sort of own it for yourself and present it to the world through your own lens, so to speak, not only the lens of your camera, but the lens of your personality and who you are as a human being. So, the process is really magical. And I felt that, and I certainly got a good taste of that when I had my own darkroom. And it was from that point on, it was clear, like, this is how I want to spend the rest of my life.
Yeah. I hate to sound old, but those were the days, right? Like
those were the days. Yeah.
It was a magical experience. And not that it still can't be, but it's definitely changed with technology and digital. It's not, it's not tactile like it used to be. I can relate being in the dark room for hours on end with the chemistry, smelling the chemistry, and, watching that first print come up and thinking, oh my God, it's it. Like I got it, I got something good here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a very organic, although it was chemistry, it was a very, very organic process. And now it's straight up digital, And I would have to say that, in a way, I'm kind of quite grateful that I started photography back in the days of film, pre-computer, pre-Photoshop. And I'm still shooting to this day, but like post-computer, post-Photoshop, post-digital, and now social media, and with the iPhone. Like, in a way, we kind of living in the age of photography now. If you think about it, like more pictures were probably taken today than they were in the first 100 years of photography globally.
Right.
It's been democratized. I would say that, when young up and coming people that want to get advice from me, and they say like, what advice do you have? And I'm just like, well, nowadays it's actually relatively easy to take a good picture, because you just helped so much by technology. I mean, these iPhones are incredible. If you think about it, like what they can do. But what that means is it's actually exponentially more difficult to become a great photographer, because you have to rise above such a high standard, where back in the good old days, shall I say, you could build a career on a certain technique. You could build a career on shooting a type of film, exposing it a certain way, processing it with Jose or Fred or Alfred, or whoever it is, the guy that's doing your processing down at the lab. You would process it a certain way, maybe it's cross-process or something, and you would have this kind of this look that would be your look, and you could build an entire career on that. But now anybody can create that look. You just scroll and hit a filter, and it's totally democratized. So what's it going to take to become an amazing photographer now? And I think it's a lot more difficult. And I think the answer to that is what's it going to take is it's really being able to, it's really about a point of view. You just have to have a really unique point of view that you can translate well through the medium of photography.
And I don't care where we're at with technology and digital, lighting still counts. I mean, photography is about lighting. And I think, that's something that craft has somewhat gone away, when you have filters and software that can do things, like you said, with the push of a button, right?
Yeah. I think lighting is actually, in a way, it's kind of somewhat less important. It's still very, very important. But, with digital, you can take something, you can up the contrast, you can do stuff to it that helps things along. But, garbage in, garbage out, right? So, ultimately, if you want to do a great picture, just light it great from the beginning. But I think, it's also important to take into consideration that when you take a photograph, I'll give you an anecdote. I think Richard Avedon, he did these master classes back in the day when he was still alive. And I think one of his first classes was to do a great photograph inside a photo booth, because it takes away your control of the technicalities. And I think a lot of photographers, certainly back then and probably now, would get too hung up on the technicalities. You look at someone like Terry Richardson, and he's just got an on-camera flash, and that's it. And he's become like huge. And he's not doing much anymore because of the whole Me Too thing. But because he had a point of view, and that's the key. You can light anything up the wahoo as much as you like, but if you don't have a consistent point of view, then you really are like dabbling in craft. And there's so many other things to a photograph. It's lighting. It's also body language. What is your subject doing? What are they wearing? What's the makeup? What's the hair doing? What situation are they in? What's your angle? Are you shooting from low or from high? All these factors, it's like a big soup of ingredients that they all got to like work together to produce something that's transcendent. And that's really what I love about photography, is how transcendent it can be. It's a portal that opens up, that transcends time. And I believe that a great photograph is something that transmits emotional energy through that portal. No matter how long ago that photograph was taken, when you experience that photograph, you will feel something in your body. And that is energy that's being transmitted from that moment that was either taken, like in the sense of a documentary photographer, or maybe orchestrated, like in the sense of a fashion photographer like Helmut Newton or Guy Bourdin. But you would feel something. And that's the beauty of photography, because it transcends time. You can't unsee a photograph once you've seen it. As soon as you see it in an instant, it's there. You've now experienced it. So it's kind of in a way, it's kind of quite a shamanic process, I believe. A lot of ingredients go into it. And I think lighting is a very, very important component, but it's certainly not the only component. That's for sure.
So when you went to London in the early years, were you assisting there before you made the jump, just doing your own work?
I was definitely assisting for sure. I moved to London when I was 22. So it was 1994, just before the first and free elections of South Africa. So just after Nelson Mandela got released and stuff. And I got a job with a very, very busy photographer by the name of John Bishop. He came I got it as a referral from the photographer I'd worked with in South Africa a lot. He was an English photographer by the name of Roy Giles, who was basically, I'd have to credit him for my early start in photography. So I got this job, and I was working on Showland Road in Maida Vale in London. And this photographer was basically on the road traveling 6 days out of every 7 days. So straight away, after 6 weeks of being in London, the first job was like in Paris, and then we were in Milan, and then Bermuda. And then I just was on the road constantly traveling. And this was now a different ball game, so to speak, in terms of the professionalism and the level of photography. And what I mean by that is not only, I mean, I did assist other photographers in South Africa. Don't get me wrong. My connection to go overseas was this English photographer. But the thing is that South Africa, the photographic industry is obviously a lot smaller because it's a small country in the tip of Africa. And photographers there would have to span many different genres, shall we say. So it would be like one photographer would have to be able to shoot cars and annual reports, and then a bit of fashion and a bit of beauty and some still life, and have all these different disciplines, because that's how you would make your living. Where when I moved to London, you would get just still life photographers and just advertising photographers and just fashion photographers. So it was a very different experience because it was like diving deep into one vertical of photography. And I was working with this fashion photographer. He was mostly doing catalogs. But, you know, that's when I really learned about lighting people really well. He had a very, very good sense of daylight and how to position the model to get the best out of daylight. And also, I really got used to the grueling schedule, because we were literally, you know, packing up and moving and flying and packing up and moving constantly for about a year before I packed that job in and then moved on to be more freelance and have more time to do my own test work and build my own portfolio. But that initial year in London was very formative. It taught me a lot.
So South Africa, people were more generalists. They have to shoot a lot of different stuff. And when you moved to London, you know, much larger market, everybody's very specialized.
Exactly. You nailed it. Exactly that. Which I think is kind of like the perfect way to learn it. Because, I mean, I don't know, when I look back at my photographic career and I would compare it to the perfect photographic career, which obviously doesn't exist, you know, there's a pro and a con to that. Is you know, in my formative years, because I was insisting on still life and cars and location and beauty and advertising, all these different things, I was able to be quite a generalist. But I think when you're starting out, you know, people want to know that you do a certain thing and a certain thing well. And sometimes being a generalist doesn't always serve you. I think it did serve me in the sense that my photographic career has, you know, I mean, I've done pretty much everything from advertising to sport to music to beauty to fashion to all these different things. I think it certainly helped in one respect, but also it may have not helped in other respects. So, but I'm happy with the way it turned out, because I really learned the full spectrum of photography, and I think it's really helping with my artwork to this day. So,
yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? But at the same time, it taught you a lot of being in all those different types of situations. Really teaches you how to troubleshoot. You know, when all of a sudden you're getting thrown something at you that you didn't, you know, anticipate. You're like, totally. Okay, I might not have done this before, but I've done something similar, or I can pull from this experience and make this happen, right?
100%, totally. And boy, the curveballs come when you're a professional photographer. You really got to know how to think on your feet.
Right.
Right. And especially, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just something that comes to mind, actually. I was on Zuma Beach in Los Angeles, and I was photographing Jennifer Lopez for Venus, which is a very big advertising campaign for the razors that shave women's legs, you know. And you know, you got J-Lo, and she's like this big diva and big star, and this whole full-on production and this and that. And they wanted her in a hammock on the beach with blue sea in the background and a beautiful sunny day. And it just so happens that it was cloudy and raining. And you know, they got all this money and all this stuff, and like the client wants a picture of J-Lo in a hammock in the sunshine. So, you know, these are the kinds of things, you know, I lit it and I did it with flash and I tweaked it a little bit and I made it look great. And you can probably find those images if you just search them online. She's lying in a hammock with a big smile on her face and looks super sunny, but they were shot in the rain. So, you know, these things, they happen a lot. And one thing I decided early in my career is never stress about the weather, because there's nothing you can do about it. Just make it happen.
You have zero control when you're on location outside, and
Well, you have zero control about the weather. You got a lot of control of what you can do with it. You know,
with lighting, yes. If you know what you're doing with lighting, you can make it look how you want it.
Exactly.
But, yeah. Wind, rain, all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Not having sun when you want sun.
Totally. You just got to roll with it, man.
Yeah.
Just got to roll with it. I've taken some of my best pictures in the rain. So.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I'm a location guy, so I can relate. Like, I spent not this summer, but the summer before, doing location portraits in Southern Colorado, and it rained almost every single flipping day. So it was a lot of moving parts to make some stuff happen, and you just roll with it. Like, you just literally have to laugh,
Yeah. But Annie Leibovitz says when she wakes up in the morning and looks out the window and sees a blue sky, she goes like, oh my God, there's going to be a terrible day. So it just depends on your style. She loves a moody, cloudy sky. Well, Annie Leibovitz.
Yeah.
And you look at her work, it's all, it's that softbox flash, like slightly feathered, super well balanced. There's always a nice, consistent, soft lighting throughout. And she does not like hard blue sky lighting. It just kind of freaks her out. Well, this is what she told me anyway. So, it just really, as I said, man plans, God laughs. And the best we can do is work with what we've got.
That's right.
You beat me to the punchline there, because that's exactly it, man.
Totally.
Oh, so what was in everybody's career, especially someone that has had the career that you've had, what was the big break, or what was the catalyst to set you on this path? Because you've photographed a lot of famous people in your career. Was there a specific shoot or a specific person that kind of set you on this path?
I would say, obviously it's a few things that happen along the way. I'll just give you as concise of an answer as I can. So in the days of London, I'd been assisting as a freelancer. I'd been working with some different photographers. I got to know all the model agencies. I was doing a lot of test work. For those of you out there, that just to explain what that is basically models need pictures for their portfolios. So I would volunteer to shoot those pictures, and in turn I would get a young up and coming model. So it's like a win-win. She or he would get pictures for their portfolio, and I would get the pictures for my portfolio. So, and because my mother back in South Africa was a stylist, and she actually had a photo production company, she was working on a video, on a TV commercial with these African elephants. And she became friendly with the elephant trainer and said to me that if I ever wanted to go and shoot with African elephants, that she'd be able to organize it. So this was a huge opportunity, because I'm like, wow, I can shoot with these beautiful African elephants in Africa. And I was kind of at the tail end of my assisting days, and I had to kind of come up with a way to make a break for myself. And through the years of assisting, I had obviously become friends with the assistants of other people on the crew. So I would be working with a photographer. The photographer would have a stylist, but that stylist would also have an assistant. So I became buddies with the assistant stylist. I became buddies with the assistant makeup artist. And you kind of, all the assistants kind of pull together and kind of do these test shoots. So knowing that I had this opportunity to shoot with these African elephants, I was like, man, we've got to do this. We've got to pull this together. Like, how are we going to do this? And what I did was I realized that a lot of these weekly newspapers, like the Sunday Telegraph, the Sunday Times, the Guardian, all these papers in London, the Evening Standard, every Sunday they would have the magazine that would come out. It's almost like the New York Times magazine, the equivalent of. And in all those magazines, there would be a fashion spread, which means that whoever's the fashion director would have to come up with a new concept and idea for a fashion shoot every single week. And I'd met some of these fashion directors and editors throughout my assistant career, called them all up and said, look, we can produce a shoot for you in South Africa on location in Africa for the same budget that you would do a shoot here in London. And I would have I had all these ideas in one page ideas written out with some mood boards, etc., to make it as easy for them as possible to say yes. And we got I think it was 5 different commissions from 5 different magazines, because they were like, God, this is easy. Oh yeah, let's do that idea. And it's the same budget. Great. Like, go and do it. We made it super easy for them. So I'd pulled together maybe £20,000 worth of budget. And with that, I borrowed the money from my uncle, flew my crew down to South Africa. And the goal of this whole, so we say this whole plan, master plan, was to get to shoot with these African elephants. And there was a magazine at the time called Dutch Magazine, which was a magazine out of Paris, and was run by this, he's actually a photographer now by the name of Matthias Vriends. So, he was in Paris. So we cold called and said, look, we're going to be in Paris. Please, can we come and see you? We weren't going to be in Paris at all, but he said, yes, you can come see us tomorrow. So the next morning we were on the Eurostar, myself and the stylist, and we got a meeting with Matthias. And back then I had a shaved head, I had an eyebrow ring, I had two earrings in each ear. And to be honest with you, I kind of looked a little gay, really. And a lot of these fashion directors are gay. And I think this guy just kind of took a liking to me, and and sort of gave me a little bit more time than he would normally have given. And then we were able to present this idea with the elephants. And he just happened to have an issue coming up called Skin. And he was like, great, I think you can do this. Go and shoot pictures with these elephants. They didn't have any budget whatsoever. It was photographers had to fund their own shoots for this magazine, because it was really about being cool, and just that the placement in the magazine was kudos and high prestige. So photographers essentially paid for their own shoots. And Mario Testino had been shooting the covers, and Stephen Klein had been shooting the covers. So it was a big deal to be doing this magazine, because the biggest photographers in the world were shooting this magazine. Anyway, we managed to pull together this whole master plan, got all the budget, got my team down to South Africa, did these shoots for these newspaper magazines. And then we drove 6 hours up the coast and spent 4 days with these African elephants, flew out this model by the name of Rafael. He was a Polish model, and spent 4 days shooting with my Pentax 6x7 with a leaf shutter lens, because you can't sync less than 60th of a second or more than 60th of a second on those cameras. Had a little flash and a small little crew, and did basically a men's swimsuit editorial with these elephants. It just so happened that one of my cameras wasn't working. So when I got my film back, I only got half my film back, but there was enough there to pull together some really beautiful prints. And I printed these prints back in London, and we went to go and meet Matthias, the editor-in-chief of Dutch Magazine, in his hotel room in London. And I just remember the moment of showing him the prints, and he opened these prints and spread them out on the bed, and his jaw just dropped. And he was like, my God. And he picked up this one picture of, it was a picture of the model up a tree, and this elephant trunk is like coming up, almost quite phallic, actually. And I think it has these tones, these like overtones of sexuality to it, shall we say. And he just held up this print and said, oh my God, this is the cover. And I just remember being so elated and walking out of that hotel room and walking in the streets of London completely. It felt like I was walking like out of the Matrix. I just couldn't believe this was happening. Like, I got the cover of the magazine and 24 pages of this incredible magazine that Stephen Klein and Mario Testino just done the covers for. And I was 27 years old. It was probably one of my very first editorial shoots. And I got the cover and 24-page spread. And from that point on, it was into the stratosphere. I mean, I had Karl Lagerfeld phoning, Tom Ford phoning, all these big fashion labels wanting my portfolio from all over the world. And I didn't even have a portfolio. I had these prints from this elephant shoot and a couple of images from these newspaper magazines. But that was it. I mean, that was the big break. And it got me into a bunch of other magazines. Now, all of a sudden, Dazed and Confused wanted to shoot, Arena Magazine, The Face, ID Magazine, all these magazines wanted to shoot. And, I'd spent all my money and I hadn't made any money. And I was living on basically bowls of rice and chopped tomatoes for about 2.5 weeks. Actually, no, it was more like 3.5 weeks before I plucked up the courage to ask my friend loan me some money so I could eat. But so it was an interesting time because on the one hand, my name was just like broadcast out there in the highest echelons of the fashion industry, and yet I was so stressed out around money and malnourished at the time. But anyway, so that was the big break, and it was from the momentum of that we managed to get a shoot with this other magazine called Attitude. That we convinced them to do half the shoot in London and half the shoot in New York. And that got us out to New York. And that's when I found my first agent on the back of Elephant Boy, a guy by the name of Stephen Pranica from the Creative Exchange Agency, he also represents David LaChapelle. And as soon as I got signed with the agent, I got the campaign from Diesel Clothing was my first campaign. Actually, it was my first fashion campaign. The very first campaign I got from that editorial was for BMW, and they flew me out to Hamburg to meet the agency, some German agency. And I remember the art director walking into the boardroom, and I was sitting there, as I said, bald head, 2 earrings, an eyebrow ring. I'd wear these like tight tattoo shirts, and this art director walked in and held the cover of Dutch magazine and was like, "We want you to shoot BMW. We want it like this." And I was like, "Okay." Sure, sure thing. And I was like, "Where do you want to shoot? You can shoot anywhere in the world." And I was like, "Okay." And anyway, I decided to shoot in Spain, and so yeah, it was on the back of that. It went into the stratosphere, man. And so yeah, from that it was all these other magazines, and I did the BMW campaign, the Diesel campaign for Diesel Clothing, which is a pretty big deal, and then Costume National, and then I got picked up by Flaunt magazine, a guy by the name of Luis Barajas, who ran Details magazine, or Detour, I think it was. And he flew me out to LA to shoot Drew Barrymore, who was my very first celebrity. This was all on the back of that momentum from Dutch magazine. And I remember I was in South Africa on holiday, and I had to get in a plane and fly to LA and land in LA, and took Drew out to Vasquez Rocks, and she was my very first celebrity, and it was a big deal. And it all just steamrolled from there, shall we say. That's how it all started.
That's a great story. Like the one thing, cool. Funding your own shoot, kind of in a dire situation, and it all comes together. People love what you do, and all of a sudden you got people calling you from all over the place to shoot their ad campaigns, and that's great, man.
Yeah, it was super cool. It was, it went from one thing to the next. And I have to say at the time, I didn't realize, I knew it was going well, but I didn't, now when I look back at that work 25 years later, and I'm seeing those campaigns I did for Diesel and the shoot I did for Dazed and Confused with balloons exploding, shot at 12,000th of a second, timed with these sound devices that trigger flashes. I'm like, geez, man, it was cutting edge stuff for back then. And for some reason, I probably could have done with having a bigger ego back then, to be honest with you, because I always felt like a bit of an outsider. I think because I came from South Africa, and I didn't really grow up in London, and I was always a foreigner, and I just yeah, it was interesting. It's such an interesting inquiry to look back at the work now and see how groundbreaking it was for the time, and yet knowing how insecure I was at the time. Like I was really insecure. It was all about your next picture, and it's a tough industry. It's a tough industry to make a break. But looking back on it, I certainly did some cool stuff, I tell you.
Yeah, a little bit of imposter syndrome, and it's fickle that you can rise up like that, but it can fall just as quickly. So exactly,
yeah, you can. And I think everybody wanted the next Elephant Boy shoot, but how do you beat that? You got African elephants in Africa. You can't. What do you And then you're in a studio doing something for Russian Vogue or something with Mila Jovovich, and you got a white background, and it's just not going to have the same gravitas. So I think that's, I think in all honesty and to be vulnerable, I think like success kind of came too fast in a way. Like I wasn't quite ready for it. You know, I hadn't like stewed in it yet, and I just felt like I could fall so easily. And I think I did make mistakes, and I did do some of the wrong things. And you know, it wasn't the perfect photographic career. Not that one exists, but certainly at the time, you know, I felt like, you know, because I only know about the jobs that I didn't get, right, and the opportunities that I missed. Everybody looks in from the outside, and oh my God, like, and don't get me wrong, it's been an incredible career, like wow. But when you're in it and you're starting out and you're not prepared and you this and that and you didn't get the job shooting this and you didn't get that job, but you got this job, and you know, it's a much more mixed bag. And I think just in general, we have to be very aware and careful not to compare our insides to somebody else's outside.
That's
because
totally
certainly
it.
inside of us, it was certainly for me, it was I was insecure, man. You know, what can I say? That was it.
Yeah. But don't you think everybody is? I mean, don't you think that?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, truly, like nobody's ever prepared. The stars aligned for you. You knew what you were doing with that Elephant Boy shoot, but at the same time, it could have gone, you know, it could have gone completely sideways. Like the shots that you got maybe wouldn't have been the shots, right? Like they could have been on the other camera that you didn't get any film from. I mean, and back in the day with film, a multitude of things could happen. The chemistry could have been fucked up at the lab, and you know, I mean, anything. Seriously, like.
Oh, I know. Trust me, I've been through some nightmares. Also with digital as well. When digital first came out, I remember there was a situation where all the shots for this 3-day campaign with Nike were lost. Like early digital days, and I hired this digital company, and I just remember at the end of the 3-day shoot, going to the bathroom and coming out and just seeing the digital tech like scratching his head looking at the computers, and he'd lost everything. Did some like backup or something and just lost all of it.
Oh, holy shit.
Yeah, but that also happened with film. I remember I did a campaign with Eve, the rapper Eve, and there was a big Times Square billboards, right? And it was back in the days of shooting 4x5. I did a lot of work on 4x5, the old Linhof land camera. A lot of my big sports stuff I would do in 4x5. I don't even know if I'd be able to do it now. But I remember that we had these sheet films. It's like basically it's like each sheet of film is encapsulated into 2 pieces of light-proof paper, and it has like a little clip, and you'd put the sheet in and clip something in the back of the cartridge, and these like little clamps would hold the metal piece that holds the film, and then you would slide the paper out this like sheath, and then it would expose on the film, and then you'd slide the sheath back in, do the release, and take the whole thing out. And this is how you would shoot 4x5. And the clip in my little camera thing was not working. So every time I pulled the sheath out, I was pulling the entire film plate out. So I was exposing this entire shoot onto the plastic of the film cartridge. And then when I got the film back, there wasn't any exposures. It was all completely blank, except I had 2 half exposures. One was half the top half of Eve's body, and the other exposure, a couple of sheets down the line, was the bottom half of Eve's body. And it just so happened that the 2 halves like fitted together perfectly.
Oh, Jesus.
So I had this one image of Eve, and it was like this big set in the studio with fire, with this fire pyrotechnics and this whole thing. And I had this one shot that I went back to the ad agency with, and I was like, this is your shot. And they're like, oh, it's great. Can we see more? And I was like, no, you can't. You cannot see more, because this is it.
This is it. This is all I'm giving you.
So
that's when you have to be a good salesman, right? Like, oh, God, don't let them see your sweat. Like, this is the shot. This is the only one you get. This is it, man.
Yeah. I mean, I did have to let them know what happened. But, you know, it was a good shot. I mean, you know, maybe we'll supply it so that your viewers can see it. But the one thing I would change in that shot is the position of her arm is just a little bit too square and too forced. And I just would have liked it a bit more relaxed, but I had no other image. I had no other half a body to choose from. That was it. So.
Oh my God.
It's really funny. Eh? Oh man,
it's funny now. It wasn't funny then.
Yeah,
No.
it wasn't funny then at all. So
It's
funny.
one of those sphincter puckering moments when you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah. Anyway, thank goodness that didn't happen that many times. I think there might have been one other time something happened, but those are the two. Those are the two that I remember the most clearly because they were the biggest budgets and the bigger mess ups, so we say.
Oh man. It makes me sweat. My hands are sweaty just thinking about it, man.
Uneasy.
Oh God. Oh man. Yeah, I'm actually almost sweating about it now. Just but I survived, man.
You did. Yeah. Well, and that's what, being a professional is about. Like just keeping it together and rolling with the punches, right? Because
absolutely.
And especially back then, but God, like losing all your digital files, like that would have been like, I can't even imagine.
Oh, it was a big deal. And I remember actually this particular shoot was for the Euro. It was all the advertising for the Euro Cup soccer of 2004. So, this is a big deal. I mean, the Euro Cup is the one tournament down from the World Cup. And this particular shoot we were doing, essentially what we were doing all the background plates. And the concept was that we would have Ronaldo at the time dribbling the ball, and then you would see these defeated footballers behind, like fallen over, right? So this was like a test shoot to test the lighting, to test and get these background plates and we were using all these club footballers. So that's the shoot that basically got accidentally deleted. And then, Nike, thank God I hired a company to do the digital, because a lot of photographers do their own digital, and it would have been a total nightmare if I had done my own digital and lost all the work. But I didn't, thank goodness. But then the main campaign, they had to change the concept because, of course, they didn't have the background plates anymore. So they had to change the concept entirely. But the main campaign was shooting for 3 weeks in Barcelona at the football stadium, at the soccer stadium. And I shot about 60 of the top soccer players in the world back then, all coming through the studio. And I was shooting in a conference room just to the side of the stadium. They were doing the TV commercial at the same time. And they asked me, they were like, who should do the digital? And I was like, the same company. And they're like, what? And I was like, lightning will not strike the same place twice. Trust me, they have learned their lesson. They will not mess us up again. So we ended up using them again for the shoot, and it was so buckled down and like military precision on that one. But that was a pretty cool. It ended up being a really, really cool campaign, actually, and some pretty cutting edge lighting techniques. I sort of created this stroboscopic silhouette thing where you captures the athlete's movement, but it's against a white background. It was really, really cool. It was using all the latest technology in Flash back in those days. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I mean, they wanted to capture movement. They wanted to do something kind of with multiple exposures, but they wanted the authenticness of, kicking the soccer ball and heading a ball or whatever the most dynamic soccer action was. And I'd studied martial arts from the age of like 8 to age of 22. And I've got a pretty good sense of how to move and how the body moves in space. I'm quite a physical guy, so I have a natural knack for shooting athletes and shooting people in motion. And in fact, some of my earlier fashion work was very much models in motion, which is what Nike picked up on that. And they're like, oh my God, this guy can shoot action. Like, let's get him to shoot the Euro Cup. So they came to me with this concept. They're like, look, we want this, but it's got to be against a white background. And I don't know if understanding the technicalities of photography, but if you're going to do some kind of stroboscopic exposure, and what I mean by that is that you would maybe press the shutter would be open for maybe half a second. And in that half a second, you'd have maybe 6 or 7 flashes pop off. That most of these kinds of things happen on a black background, because every point in the arc of movement that gets exposed, you want to see it clearly. And the only way to see it clearly is if there's contrast, and therefore you want a dark background and you light your subject. And there's a whole bunch of images out there with people swinging golf clubs and people swinging baseball bats. And generally, you always see it against a dark background. But these guys, they wanted the same effect, but against a white background. Now, of course, any white background is going to bleed through any exposure that you're going to get. If if the foot's in one position and then it moves 6 inches to the next position, next time the flash goes off, the white background will just burn through the exposure of the first foot. So I hope I'm kind of explaining this.
Yeah.
Better to show it than to explain it. So I had to kind of figure out this way of like, how am I going to do this? And I figured it out. And essentially, the way I did it was that I used a bunch of stroboscopic flashes. They were all bronze color flashes that you can trigger at different times. So a lot of technical, like precision dialing things into within milliseconds of each other. But I would expose the background 6 times. So basically, although the background looks white, it's not actually white. It's slightly off-white. And the only way it gets to off-white is through 6 different exposures. But because I'm exposing the background gradually, it kind of held the definition of the movement of the athlete across the background. So it was kind of interesting because, so basically I would set up this very technical timing system. And when I would press the button, the athlete would be running, and let's say he would be kicking a soccer ball. And sometimes I would only expose the background and not the subject. So therefore, what you get is a silhouette, a shadow. And then the next frame, I would only expose the subject, but not the background. So now you get like a definition of a foot. And then the next frame, only expose the background, but not the subject. And then you get another shadow. And you kind of get this interplay between shadow and exposure, which ends up being this super dynamic picture of like Thierry Henry doing a bicycle kick against a white background. And you would get these things that would happen, like, that maybe the face would be slightly distorted or some of the legs would be slightly distorted. But these are the magical accidents that happen when you create a system like this. And you can't plan for that kind of thing if you were to do it in Photoshop. And you can't get the authenticity of the action and the ferociousness and the power of the action if you compositing it in Photoshop. So, what they wanted from this was authentic movement shot where you get to see the motion of the athletes. And that's certainly what I gave them. And I remember in the studio, I would ask my athletes, I'd say to them, I'd get Ronaldo, these are the biggest sports stars in the world at the time. Huge, huge stars. And when they would walk into the studio, I would say, look, if you break a light, you're doing a great job. Like, don't break shit. Just please, just do it, because I need to get you looking the best you can look and the most authentic you can look. And a couple of lights got broken, but man, they were happy with that campaign. And it was my biggest paycheck back in the day. And it was just awesome. I just remember like halfway through the campaign, they were like, we love this so much. Can we buy the worldwide rights? Yes. Can we buy merchandising? Oh, yes. Can we buy this? Yes, you can. No, you can buy that too. And I can just have it all. So that was an awesome time of my life, I tell you. It was groundbreaking stuff.
So I got a kind of a follow-up question. Did you kind of figure this out prior? Obviously you knew you're going to do this photo shoot. Did you kind of work this out in your head and on paper before, or did you just practice it, or was it like you knew exactly what you wanted to do?
I had an idea, obviously, because you're in the language of photography, right? And I'm pretty technical guy, so I sort of had a thesis. I was like, if we do it like this, and I went into Industrial Super Studio in New York, because I was living in New York at the time, and I photographed my wife at the time, and just get her to do some actions, and I got some lighting, and I just sort of figured it out, and I was like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And then obviously there was a couple of weeks of refinement, and then had to get all the equipment shipped into Barcelona because they didn't have all this latest bronze color flash gear and all that. It must have cost an absolute fortune to get all that stuff into the studio. But by the time we got into the studio in Barcelona, I certainly had the technique down. What I was not planning for, however, was that we had to shoot in a conference room because we had to be in the football stadium, because they wouldn't have the athletes come to the football stadium and then have to go across town to another studio. So we had to shoot it in the stadium. So they gave us a conference room. And what I wasn't planning was for 8.5-foot ceilings.
Oh my God.
Which is really not very high when you're doing athletes and sport. And when you have so we built this double cyc in the studio, a double cyc, a double infinity curve, shall I say. It basically means that from the ceiling to the wall, there's a curve. And then from the wall to the floor, there's also a curve. When the athletes were jumping, I mean, their heads were only like a foot away from the ceiling, but we figured it out. We did it. And, but again, that brings me back to that point of being a pro, right? There's always going to be a curveball thrown at you, no matter what. And I was super prepared. The technique was down. All my flash exposures were down. The millisecond delays were all like fine tuned and everything. And then we get into this thing and it's like, oh my God, there's 8.5-foot ceilings. How are we going to do this? But we did it.
That's crazy.
Oh man. It's so it's the way it always rolls too. Like
always,
you can be as prepared as you possibly can, and there'll be something that's just thrown into the mix. And you're like, all right, I guess we're rolling with this one,
Man plans, God laughs, man. That's just I say that to myself every day. I tell you.
We're talking about this technique, but talk about the catalyst and the influence of Harold Edgerton.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, so this is, I when I was living in London, when I was still an assistant and just at the time when I was breaking out into becoming a photographer and freelancing, I was living with a friend of mine who was working with a nature documentarian, shall I say. And I rented a room in the back of their humble flat in Hammersmith in London. And he went to the Great Barrier Reef with the nature documentarian and this and that. And he showed me what they were working on. And there was a whole bunch of like lenses and little triggering devices that they had, and all these like kind of like cool stuff to capture flies landing on flowers and, underwater photography and just really cool stuff. And so it was that, coupled with the fact that, on my weekends in rainy, drizzly London, because that was the one thing, that's why I couldn't live there coming from South Africa. I spent 7 years there and it was hard because the weather's so bad. They say that in England you get 6 weeks of bad weather and then the rest of the year is winter. So anyway, on the rainy weekends, sort of walk around Covent Garden and I'd go to all the photo bookstores and just look for inspiration and just look at all the books. And I came across this book by Harold Edgerton, which is called Stopping Time. And it's all this kind of stuff, bullets going through apples and multiple exposures and this and that. And I just happened to be renting a room from this nature photographer assistant. And it was the coupling of those two influences that I was like, I should do something like this. And he put me in touch with someone that made this little triggering device so that I could trigger flash with sound or with vibration or the breaking of a laser beam. And then I was experimenting with droplets inside my kitchen sink. And this is where I came up with the idea to shoot balloons popping for my first editorial I did for Dazed and Confused magazine. So I had this model by the name of Hannah Law. It was a fashion shoot. Most of the clothes was Alexander McQueen. And I had this model blowing up balloons, and these balloons were popping, and I'd shoot these balloons in mid-explosion, mid-pop, shot at 12,000th of a second, perfectly timed every time. And this was because of this equipment that his name was Tim, he introduced me to someone who could get me this kind of like this cutting-edge equipment as a result of the inquiry from coming across this book, Stopping Time by Harold Edgerton. In those days, when you're trying to make a name for yourself as a photographer, you need an angle, you need something new, unique, you need something that's cool that nobody else was doing, and this was my angle. So this was a super famous shoot, and it was pretty groundbreaking at the time. And in fact, when I did my diesel campaign, I replicated this one image for the diesel campaign, and then I did another shoot like this with balloons popping later on. And it's something that I still want to do with my art, in fact, which we can get to later. It's like incorporating the sense of time and the element of time through photography, because photography is a great tool of time. That's how I kind of look at it. And to infuse that into the artwork, I think is something that would be really interesting and inspiring and super multi-dimensional. So that's probably a series I'm going to work on next year.
Sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see
super
that.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
You did a lot of fashion campaigns, advertising campaigns. You did stuff for the Olympics. You mentioned the football campaign that you did, but you've also photographed a lot of famous people, like over 100 celebrities. I think I read at some point.
At least 100.
Did you enjoy that work? Did you enjoy interacting with those folks?
Yeah. I mean, very much so. Look, at the end of the day, as a photographer, I would say, like, yes, I do love shooting celebrities, and that's pretty much because I love shooting people. So at the end of the day, they're just people. Now, of course, they're very famous people. They've got very famous faces, and there's a whole ecosystem that comes around them. So a lot of the time when I would shoot a celebrity, when I'm actually on set with a celebrity, it would be great. But all the stuff that happens before, and the publicists, and you can't do something like this, and you have to do it like that, and you got to do the shot in 5 minutes. You don't have time. You only got the person for 2 hours. There's a lot of restraint around shooting a celebrity, and this, I think, really trained me well for shooting quick and fast, because you don't have the luxury of doing lots of lighting tests and getting the lighting really great, because you got Hugh Jackman or Whitney Houston hanging around on set waiting for you. You can't have that happen. You cannot have that happen as a photographer. So you got to have your shit down. I liked the challenge of that, and I liked the magic of the celebrity steps on set. The first Polaroid looks amazing. Shoot. Okay, we're done. Thank you. And I would always have the goal of saying I'm done before they would say that they were done. You don't want the celebrity to be like, look, okay, we're done now. Because that's just that is not a good look. You want to be like, okay, we're done. The celebrity's like, what? We done? Like, yeah, we're done. We got the shot. Thank you. Next. Like, that is way cooler than the celebrity being like, no, listen, we gotta move on. We gotta hurry up. So the challenge of shooting the celebrities, I really loved. And at the end of the day, let's face it, it's like we grow up, we have all these experiences with these actors on screen, Hugh Jackman, and we listen to these great album covers like Whitney Houston and this and that. And all of a sudden, I'm a kid from South Africa, grew up in Johannesburg, and here I am in New York City, and I got Whitney Houston in front of my lens. I mean, geez, I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow, this is Whitney Houston, the biggest star in the world. So the kudos and the excitement of that was amazing. I mean, really, really amazing. And then to do great pictures, and then for them to see the pictures and be like, oh my God, I look great. Like, that was such a beautiful collaboration. It was such a beautiful process to be in creative collaboration with these icons. I had to sort of pinch myself at times. I was like, I can't believe this is happening to me, So in that respect, I loved it, and I still love it. I mean, I would still shoot celebrities to this day if they asked me. I would approach it differently now that I'm an artist, I'm not a photographer. I'm more than a photographer, shall we say? But yeah, and again, talk about curveballs, man. Talk about curveballs. I mean, when you're shooting celebrities, now you got to be prepared for some curveballs. Like some of the things that they will do and not do on set. Like, I remember there was one situation I was shooting Gal Gadot for Asus Computers. So big ad camp. This is not a celebrity. Like, there's different ways you can shoot celebrities, right? You can shoot them for a magazine, So they kind of showing up because they're doing it for the PR and they're doing it for the press and the exposure and for their image. Or they're showing up because a computer company or a beauty company is paying them a ton of money to put their face on the name of their brand. Generally, they're not crazy about doing this kind of stuff because a lot of the time they feel like it's a bit of a sellout, but they got to do it. You know, you're doing celebrity for an editorial, it's a little bit more creative, it's a little bit more flow. When you're doing it for advertising, now all of a sudden it's like, well, especially in this case, I mean, I have many, many examples, but with Gal Gadot, they wanted her literally like hopping across like slightly elevated, like a fashion shot where there'd be, you know, like those great Avedon shots with the models like striding across the studio floor and her foot's just about to touch the ground. You know, you just capture just as the foot's just about to touch. So it's that element of weightlessness. So this is what they wanted with Gal Gadot, who's Wonder Woman. So we get into the studio and I just remember this is like the clients are there and I think they're from Germany or from, I don't know where they're from. But they're like, okay, we're going to do the shot. And they've spent months on this. They've spent literally months working out all the mood boards and all the composites and all the approvals. And it's gone all the way through to the top, right? And there's this like composited image of like a Gal Gadot, like body double, doing a little like stride across the studio floor and their foot's just about to touch. And the dress is flowing and they've got like a digital effect and it's all for Asus computers. And they're like, hey, this is what we want. So I'm like, okay, great. And I get the layout and I go up to Gal, who's in the hair and makeup chair. And I'm like, okay, so, this is what we're doing. You're doing some portraits and we're really happy to meet you. And it's going to be great. We're going to be quick and you'll be in and out, no problem. You're in good hands. Like I've done this a million times. Like I always try to make them feel comfortable and just build a bit of rapport before the shoot. Because a lot of the time I'm meeting them for the very first time, an hour before I'm shooting them. And she looks at the layout. She goes, no, I won't jump. I'm like, no, this is not really a jump. It's just like you're just walking across the studio floor. She goes, no, I'm not going to jump. I'm like, it's like, okay, like, why is that? And she's like, well, being Wonder Woman and everything, I can't be seen jumping for anything other than like Wonder Woman. So you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, all the other contracts that they're signing with movie studios and stuff like that. They don't really want, or maybe it was her publicist or something. She didn't want her image to be always in action like a superhero. So now all of a sudden I'm stuck in this kind of tricky position because on the one hand, I've got to obviously please Gal and make sure the shoot goes great. And on the other hand, I'm getting paid all this money by the client who have gone through months and months and months of this approval of get the shot of Gal like striding across the floor. And I've got to go back to them and be like, I'm sorry, guys, but Gal won't do this shot. And they're like, oh, so it can be tricky, man. It can be really, really, really tricky. Anyway, I did get her to walk and I had a wind machine on the skirt and I got a sense of movement, but she wasn't off the ground. And that was the thing. And I can tell you another great story about LeBron if you like. If you want to talk about curveballs. So again, so I'm hired by Nike to do the 2012 Olympic Games advertising. And they put all this money into this incredible shoe that's going to be able to have all this data transmitted to your iPhone. It tells you how many steps you've taken, the speed of your feet, how high you jump, all this kind of stuff. So it's a big thing. It's a big launch, and it's like the next like Air Jordan shot, or at least it was like presented to me that way. That like this is like Air Jordan 2.0 with LeBron James. So this is the shot we want. We want him from profile. He's just about to do a dunk. He's like flying through the air, and we want the most epic profile shot. It's got to be as good as the Michael Jordan, if not better. Michael Jordan Air. So I'm like, okay. So they're like, we will give you anything you want to get this done, but we have to let you know that LeBron will only jump and dunk the basketball for you 4 times. That's it. I was like, oh, come on, guys. We'll get the music going. It'll be cool. We'll get the vibe. We'll play some hip hop or whatever. It'll be great. And no, you don't understand. Like, he will only do it 4 times because by contract, we only have 8 dunks with LeBron James a year. And 4 of those dunks are going to be taken up by the TV commercial in the basketball arena next door, and you get the other 4 dunks. And we got to have 2 outfits. So you only get 2 dunks with his USAB outfit and 2 dunks with the Nike outfit. And that is it. That's all you're going to get. And it better be bloody great. And everything's got to be sharp. And every stitch on the shoe has got to be tack sharp. And it's got to be brilliant. You can have whatever you need. Just tell us what you need. And I was like, okay.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, so I said, look, I'm going to need some body doubles. I'm going to need to get the lighting down. Oh, and then they said, and another thing, and you're only going to have him for 20 minutes. And we have to get a standing shot, a portrait shot, a shot of him dribbling, a shot of him doing this, and a shot of him doing this. And we have to have them from 4 different angles, but you only get him for 20 minutes. Jesus. I was like, okay, right. Well, okay. Well, I need 3 days of pre-light. I need body doubles that can dunk somewhat like LeBron. And we're going to congregate inside we were shooting in Miami at some high school basketball court. And, I had all these cameras set up. I must have had about 60 or 70 flash lights set up. I have a video of the set. I mean, it's unbelievable, the set that I created. And essentially, I'd rigged everything up. It was all automated. This was back from my early days of Nike with all this like stroboscopic stuff. And I had all these Canon 5D cameras set up at different angles, 4 5D cameras and my Hasselblad camera. There's 5 cameras set up. Each camera had 13 flash heads designated to that one specific camera. So it was 5 times 13 flash heads, all rigged up over the top, over the backlighting, side lighting, kick lighting, the whole lot. And every time I pressed the button, it would trigger the next camera. So either the camera would shoot, the flashes would go off, and then it would send a signal to the next camera that would fire 2,000th of a second later. Then all those cameras would go, and then signal in the next camera that would fire 2,000th of a second after that, and then to the next camera, 2,000th of a second after that. So every time I pressed the button, it was a stroboscopic frenzy of lighting, and each camera would be capturing that movement 1,000th of a second apart from every different angle. And that's how I got the shot. And I remember the first time LeBron arrived on set. Oh, never mind the fact that the day before, after we've been pre-lighting for 3 days, the account executive walks in. He's the guy that works for Nike, but like looks after LeBron, right? So, and generally there's always like this like political like thing around it, because generally the client's always a bit miffed because they think that this guy looks after the athlete more than they look after the company, so to speak. And he walked in and he was like, it's too hot in here. This place has got to get cool. This is Miami in like February, and it was hot. And he's like, no, it's got to be cooled down to 68 degrees.
Oh, geez.
Otherwise he's not going to do it. And you should have seen like all the production people, their eyes went like bright wide. And within 2 hours, man, there were these like huge trucks with air conditioning and the air conditioning piping into the stadium. And they just with like 4 huge trucks, like cranking the air conditioning overnight to get this place cool enough for when LeBron James walks in so he can do the shot. And I remember all the lighting was set up and he was just about to do his first dunk. And I've been practicing for 3 days to get the timing just perfect, but of course I'm practicing on body doubles. I'm not practicing on the man himself. So, I'm just hoping for the best here. And, he runs up and he does this dunk and it's the perfect thing. And I shoot the picture and there's that moment, that lag of just after you shoot the picture, it pops up on the screen, because now we're shooting digital, of course. And there's that moment of lag and my heart has just stopped. And then it comes up on the screen and there's like 1 pixel of space between the tip of his shoe and the edge of the frame, like literally like 1 pixel. I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, thank God. So anyway, that was an amazing shoot. And it was like one of my best shots I think I've ever taken of an athlete. It's just so iconic. And I'm going to make some artwork from that shot, actually. I've been working on that for the last couple of months.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's a great story. And these are the things that people, when they're looking at ads, flipping through a magazine or what have you, have no idea like what has gone on to get that one photograph, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's so many moving parts.
Yeah.
And those curveballs and things that aren't even technical that you have to negotiate because there's, there's some politics involved or whatever
Totally.
it may be, you know?
Totally, man. I mean, especially when you're dealing with the big athletes and the big celebrities. I mean, these are walking corporations. They're like a corporation personified into one person. I mean, so there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I have no idea about as the photographer. I just get like slammed with the problem on the day of the shoot. Oh, no, she won't jump. Oh no, like
Yeah.
it's like, okay. Somebody could have told me this before,
Right.
maybe like
that was never communicated. And
Yeah,
now you got to be the
exactly.
go-between between the client and
Yeah, exactly.
your subject, right? To make something happen.
Totally,
Yeah.
man.
That's why you get paid the big bucks,
Exactly.
or
That's
hopefully.
why they pay the big bucks. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully.
Those are some great stories. Who are some of the people that you've collaborated with essentially over the years that you really just enjoyed spending time with them and making their portraits or shooting a campaign?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many, generally when you cut through all the crap, and you can connect. My goal was always to try and connect on a human level and just to have my subject understand that I have their interest at heart. Like that was really, really important for me. It was so important for me that they walked off the set. They walked off the experience of being photographed by me, feeling more dropped in and feeling better, no matter what, than when they came in. Like that was always my thing. It wasn't about taking a picture. It was about creating an experience where I would capture through the medium of photography. So that was my goal. And I think as a result of having that intention and holding that kind of space, I have mostly great experiences with all the subjects that I photographed. But, to answer your question more specifically, those that come to mind would be Cate Blanchett. Super, super cool. So down to earth. I photographed her a couple of times in my career. And just what an incredible person to photograph. Every single frame, she is transmitting emotional energy. It's just great. Like there's not a wrong frame you could take of her. So that's one person that comes to mind. I mean, there's always a soft spot in my heart for Drew because she was the very first celebrity I ever photographed. And then Bjork as well was super cool, super creative. I remember I photographed her eyeball with a 10x8 camera, and I must have blasted her eye with I don't know how many kilowatts of energy to get the exposure. But I mean, she was a sport because I think that would have blinded anyone, and she just held her eyeball open with these two bi-tubes, like 6 inches away from her eyeball, with this 10x8 camera with like about probably about 7 or 8 foot of bellows extension, so I could get the focus. Whitney Houston was, I wouldn't say had a great rapport, but that was certainly one of the most intense shoots from back in the day. Hugh Jackman, super down to earth and just a good laugh on set and just a heartfelt dude. So there's been lots. I mean, the list goes on and on. But in general, most have been really, really great experiences. And in fact, I would say Alicia Keys as well, another amazing human being. And I photographed her album cover, The Diary of Alicia Keys. And in fact, they're doing the 20-year anniversary this year. So, it looks like I'll be collaborating with her to do an art piece for that, which is super, super cool. But, that was early in her career. And when I look back on those moments now and see where a lot of these icons, how iconic they've become, and the history and the provenance, and when I look back on these times, I'm like, wow, that was such a special moment that you didn't, at the time I didn't know Alicia Keys. I was like, hey, cool, this young artist Alicia Keys, and now she's like, she is like Lady Gaga. I mean, I worked with her for her first album packaging, and we became buddies, and we were hanging out a lot, and it was clear that she was going to become a superstar, but she wasn't famous yet. So we were like hanging out in my little flat in LA and, just cruising and going for sushi and this and that. And then, of course, she broke out and she's become this like mega star now. So it's just, that's the beauty of photography and being a photographer, is you get to really have these very rich experiences, whether it's a rich experience being in some of the really coolest places in the world. I mean, I'm only speaking from my point of view, from my genre of photography, because I'm sure war photographers and documentary photographers, there's another type of experience. But I mean, I've been to the most beautiful places in the world at the most beautiful times of day, with some of the most interesting people in the world, the most beautiful people in the world, most famous people in the world. And you get to, well, I get to, shall I say, connect with them on a level that is a little deeper than one would normally go, because there's this collaboration and this dance that I get to dance with them, because I'm photographing them and they influencing me and I'm influencing them, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and this is what I love about photography. It's the richness of experience that enables you to have, and to record it and to make art and bring your own creativity and passion to that experience that you're having, that you get to capture forevermore. It's really, really, really beautiful.
Tenet wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine, and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm Warwick Saint, and you're listening to the Tenet Podcast.
Well, you're obviously very technical oriented and have that part of it down. How do you get people to trust you in that situation? I mean, we're talking high profile people that have publicists and handlers, and how do you negotiate those waters? How do you get to that connection? Because like you said, a lot of times you have a very limited time with these folks.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, well, firstly, you have to be a total master of your technique. You cannot be seen to be fumbling or insecure or lacking in confidence in any way whatsoever. No matter what is going on, you got to be cool, calm, and collected. So that, I would say, is number one. Now, that can be a hard thing to do when it's pissing down with rain and you got to shoot a sunny shot of J-Lo, or like, there's so many different examples of how that could be tricky to do. But as the photographer, you set the tone and you have to set the structure, and it has to feel safe. So, and when I say safe, I mean like you're not going to screw things up. So I think that is the foundation. Then I would say that one thing you should absolutely avoid is throwing out cheap flattery, because it feels like you're placating and manipulating, and it's not cool. And so I always had the intention of being honest. If something didn't look good, or they were in a certain position where maybe they had a little bit of a double chin or like something like that, I wouldn't say, hey, you got a double chin. I wouldn't say something like that, but I'd be like, look, extend your head forward. The profile is much cleaner like this. That actually doesn't work as well. Try it like this, so that they know that you are looking out for them. Because if you're like, oh, great, wonderful, great, snap, great, wonderful, it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel grounded, and it can maybe spin them out into some sort of insecure thing, like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He shot me from this angle. It didn't look great. He said it was looking great, and I know I don't look great from this angle, but he was saying it looks fantastic. This guy doesn't know what he's doing. This is what's probably going on inside the inner voice. So I think it's really important to be straight up. You got to have your technique down. You can't be seen fumbling around equipment. you want to certainly be quick. You want to give good direction, is what I said earlier, kind of like reiterating that point. Not everything's great all the time. And one of the things that I used personally, just for my style of photography, is I would always keep them moving. Although it's a still shot, I would pretty much always say to them, like, never be still. Like, keep moving. Even if you're standing in front of the camera, like, shift your weight from one foot to the other foot. Have like energy tracking in your body. And this way you would get them like out of their head. And a lot of this time, the great shot has happened when they're transitioning from one position to the other position. So if they're standing there with their hand on their hip, I know it sounds super cheesy and corny, but then I would say like, oh no, switch your body around. And as they switch around, then I'll take the shot. Or like, step into this position and hold that pose. To give them something to work with. And I would shoot it just before. And they'd be like, no, but you're not getting the pose. And I'm no, but I am actually getting the shot, because I'm getting it when you're in your body, when you actually, like, you focused on something else. You're not in your own head. So these are the kinds of techniques I would use, not always looking in the camera. A lot of the time looking just past the camera can be really helpful. And then if there was a shot list, and one of the shots had more movement in it, then I would do those more movement shots first, because it gets them more in their body, it loosens them up. And then maybe, the last shot's like the tight portrait shot of the face, because that's, they're more dropped into their body, and you're probably going to get a better portrait than when you start with a tight portrait shot, because everything's everyone's trying to find their feet, and you can sense the stress and the uneasiness when you go in tight. So these are the kinds of techniques I would use. And then a lot of the time with actors, I would give them a bit of a backstory, a bit of a character to play, so to speak. I would certainly never ask them to be themselves, because they generally don't really know what to do when that happens. So, I would give a backstory. There was one thing with, this is a particular thing with Cindy Crawford. I was shooting her in a house in Malibu, and the backstory was, you're a bored housewife, sexually frustrated. Your husband's always away on work. The kids are at school, and you're so bored. You're walking around the house and you're finding all these kids' toys, and you're actually just playing with the kids' toys. And the whole shoot was her like with a radio-controlled airplane and a little robot and a little this and that. But so when people see the pictures, they're like, oh, there's Cindy Crawford in this house playing with a robot. But in actual fact, there was a whole like backstory to kind of like keep the energy going and to keep things moving, and to kind of just give it another layer of juiciness, so to speak. So I would try and do that with most of my actors and actresses that I photographed throughout the years, and even models too.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because that's their natural form, when they're working, and they're working in the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And models, I would say a lot of the time models, a great model is amazing to photograph, because they understand that it's about evoking a mood. A lot of the time with actors and actresses, it's they generally doing this because it's part of a PR stint. They have to promote a movie, and it's like day 30 of the PR, and they're doing a world tour, and they've flown in from somewhere, and they're jet lagged, and they've got 4 hours to do the shoot, and they got to move on to the next press thing, and they want to get this done, and they just want to get it out of the way. And so you're kind of like up against a sort of a general sort of uneasiness, or a general reluctance, because it's kind of like, it's what they got to do. It's what they have to do. It's not really what they want to do. And I've got to try and break through all of that and get something that looks great for the magazine or for the client, whoever it is that I'm shooting it for. Slightly different when you're doing album packaging, because of course now you're collaborating with the artists that have put their heart and soul into the album, and they've asked you to do their image, and it's a bit more collaborative, and it's a bit more juicy in that respect. Not to say that it hasn't been juicy with celebrities and actors and actresses, but there is that element. A lot of the time they're on a PR tour, and they just want to get in and out as quickly as they can.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And for people that have never experienced something of this nature, this kind of production, talk about how many people you have like on set, because it's not just you and 1 or 2 people. There's a whole crew of people typically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. I would say generally when I'm shooting a celebrity, probably 15 people ish. I've got probably 2 or 3 assistants. You got a hair person, a makeup person. They both have assistants. That's already 7 people. Then you got a client. Then you got a publicist and a publicist assistant. And then you got your celebrity. And then you got your stylist and your stylist assistant. And then you have the client from the magazine. And then generally the celebrity comes with like a bit of an entourage of their own people that just hang out and eat all the food. So it's always a thing, It's so interesting because when back in the days of film, there was a little bit more. They had to sort of sit back because, like, what you're going to do? You're just sitting and you're watching the photo shoot, right? But now, when the screen, this was a big thing in photography, when the screen came on set. So now, every time you click the button, the image pops up a second later on the the 27-inch monitor or whatever. That changed the game. It's like the Pandora's box was open. The magician's secrets were like, revealed for all to see, and that changed things. So now all of a sudden, everybody now is an art director. Even the celebrity's entourage. Auntie so and so or whatever, or like the niece, they all got something to say about it. And that can be very distracting on set because, a lot of the time when you're clicking the button, just the sheer amazingness where you have something, you have a photo shoot and you've got the celebrity on set and you click the button and the image pops up on the screen. Just that process alone is pretty wow. Like, oh my God, wow. And what would happen a lot of the time is I would be on set now. Back in the days of film, it would just be going into the film camera and everyone would be sitting back watching it. Now they're watching the screen. And everyone's like, oh, wow, great. Oh, awesome. Great. And as the photographer, when you're on the infinity curve in the studio or if you're on location, you're hearing all this like validation, this like positive, like, oh, this must be awesome. And then you'd be like, hey, great. And you go and look at the stuff and you'd be like, oh, this is actually crap. What are you guys talking about? We've got to do that again. So it changed the dynamic. It changed the dynamics on set. So what I ended up doing is I would create this fence. I would get these, on a photo set, you have these big V, they call them V flats. It's like foam core. It's like a two 4x8 foam core boards, 4 feet by 8 feet that you tape together and it forms like a little book. And these you can use as reflectors and fill light and shadow light and everything. Anyway, I would turn these on their side and tent it so it'd be a 4-foot fence. Anytime you would block people out of the set, there were many times where you'd put up a big curtain and be like, okay, everybody that's not on set got to be behind the curtain. All those big announcements, and then you'd be shooting and then you turn around and like 20 people have like snuck inside the curtain. So now all of a sudden you don't have people like dispersed over the studio, but they're now inside the actual like the privacy area, So it'd be like, look, they're gonna want to see it no matter what. It's just too damn tempting. So let's just give them a fence. So at least they're not like on top of me when I'm shooting and they're back and they can see the images coming through and stuff like that. So yeah, there's always managing personalities and people, and then people start chatting and talking and you're trying to like direct to somebody and all this chit chat behind you is going on. And then you got to turn around and just be like, everybody can, quiet. It's like a little bit like a bunch of teenagers a lot of the time.
Oh my God. You just want to be able to say, okay, we have a closed set. Everybody has to leave but me and J-Lo.
That actually did happen. That has happened a couple of times. In fact, actually with J-Lo, big, as I said, it was the same day, same rainy day after I got through the sunny shot in the rain. And then they wanted a shot of J-Lo like walking down the beach with, the blanket wrapped, but you can see her beautiful, smooth legs coming from underneath the blanket being wrapped around her, And you got the big ad agency and the big clients paying the big bucks. And Benny Medina, who's J-Lo's manager, basically came and was like, no, this shot, it's only Saint and Jennifer. Only those two on the beach. Nobody else can be anywhere near. And of course, the client did not like this at all. And, so the client walks down with me, and I remember her saying to me, because she wanted to like brief me, and I was feeling kind of bad. I was like, I'm stuck in the middle now, like, and I remember we were walking down the beach. She was like, just make sure you get it like this. And she was like, and whatever you do not put your arm around me now. Do not put your arm around me. In other words, she thought I was like going to console her, to be like, so I've got this. But she was like so adamant that I wasn't going to do that. It's like these little things that go on behind the scenes. I was like, no, I wasn't going to put my arm around you. I'm just like talking to you about how you want the shot done. Just don't put your arm around me. So anyway, the shot was great. But yeah, sometimes, the closed set thing, we say that, and a lot of the time everybody's got an excuse to be in there, and it causes friction.
Right.
So just fence it up. People can watch from behind the fence.
You've been able to go all over the world, travel all these different countries. What does travel do for you as an artist?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, certainly keeps the inspiration flowing. I've been to, I think, over 90 countries, and many of them many times over. And I've lived in Paris, and I lived in London and New York and LA and Miami and now Montana, Johannesburg and Cape Town. I think it's just really inspiration. It's education. It's culture, seeing how, like, one thing that's always struck me when I travel, like, certain cities have a certain patina to them. There's like a certain palette, so to speak. I remember going to Moscow, and it was just kind of, everything was a bit gray and a bit harsh and a bit, like there was lots of reds and concrete and stuff. And then you go to Paris, and it's a lot of this like sand, like the sandstone kind of, it's not really sandstone, but it's kind of the bricks they use for the old buildings. And then London's always a bit gray. New York is very sort of masculine with its like towering buildings. And it's just, I suppose it's really like energy fluency, should I say, for trying to encapsulate that in 2 words, is every country and place has an energy to it. And to swim in that energy as a photographer, you get to have a much broader array of experiences that you can pull inspiration from, and it just enriches your life in general. And I think, if you to do great art, certainly for me, is I want to draw from a richness of experience and a richness of seeing incredible things and a lot of variety of different things. And I've certainly done that through being a photographer, and not only going to these locations and these different places around the world, but you're going with a certain purpose. You're not going just to sightsee. You're just going there to achieve something, to photograph something, to capture something, capture the essence of something. One particular thing comes to mind is I did a whole series of pictures for Puma in Jamaica, and spent a couple of weeks in Jamaica, and just had to capture the feeling of Jamaica and the essence of Jamaica. So I'm not just going to Jamaica to hang out on the beach and do a bit of sightseeing, go to see Bob Marley's old house. I'm there to like go to Reggae Beach and shoot with some of the Rastafarians, but with the beautiful model, juxtaposed with them, and you get to engage a lot more with the culture and the people when you're going there on a mission, as opposed to going there as a tourist. And that's been I suppose the most valuable aspect of this kind of travel, when you're traveling as a photographer or an artist into a certain place, because you're there to get into the layers underneath. You want to find that beach that nobody knows about, that's special at this time of day, or you're going into the markets of Morocco, shooting around there and seeing how I can use this market and capture the colors and the people, but yet have create a fashion story out of it. So it's a beautiful way to travel. It really is.
Do you have a favorite city that you like to work in, or?
I love working in New York. It's great. It's so easy in terms of production and stuff. But no, I would say not really. Not really. Each one has its own uniqueness. I've I've shot everywhere from in Berlin to Paris to London and New York and LA and Miami, and they all have their own flavor. And I think when you're coming in as an artist, it's kind of nice to not really like judge one city over the other, but see how you can make each one work the best way you can for the best art or the best photograph you can.
Yeah.
It's like I don't really have a favorite color. I don't really have a favorite flavor of ice cream. Although I'm biased towards chocolate, but I want to get the best flavor. I want to get the best flavor from the city, shall we say? So that's where my focus goes.
Yeah,
it's getting the best out of it and capturing the essence.
Speaking of energy fluence and going someplace unique, I know that you've been to Burning Man a number of times. You just got back within the last month.
Yeah.
What does that experience do for you as an artist?
Well, I mean, Burning Man is such an interesting human experiment, shall we say. I don't ever take any pictures at Burning Man, like hardly ever. And I decided that pretty much on the very first burn I did, after the second day, I was like, this is exhausting, because wherever you look, it's just wow. So I kind of put the camera down when I'm at Burning Man. But I would say what's interesting about Burning Man for me is that it's kind of like a beautiful example or beautiful manifestation of some of these, like, what I believe are universal principles. And what I mean by that is, this is my point of view, my sort of way of looking at the world is, the universe is really a dance between masculine and feminine energy. And what I mean by that is, when I say masculine, I'm talking more structure. And when I say feminine, I'm talking more flow. A classic example would be a river. With a river without riverbanks would just be a sort of marshy swamp. There's no real flow. The only reason why a river flows is because of the structure of the riverbanks. So you have this beautiful synergy between structure and flow. Without the structure, you don't get any flow. Okay. So with Burning Man, I see it as like a blank canvas, because when Burning Man's not happening, it's just this salt pan flat. They call it the pliers, like just this flat, super flat desert. It's a dry lake bed, essentially. And what happens about a month before the burn is these people come in, they start setting the geometry, which is the structure. And there's also like these 10 principles, which is kind of this structure. And within that, all this creativity then flows in, because there's this geometry and there's the set of principles, which is kind of like the structure, or say the masculine sort of energetic form, shall we say. And that results in this incredible amount of creativity that gets to express itself on this blank canvas. So when I go to Burning Man, I feel like I'm in this vortex of incredible amount of human expression in many, many ways. It's huge art pieces, or people running around dressed in fancy dress costumes, just this incredible like freedom of expression. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's quite cathartic. And I think it's one of the reasons why Burning Man has become such a cultural phenomenon, is because human beings can have this cathartic experience within the structure of Burning Man for that 1 week, within the geometric structure that they set and the principles that they set, that you can experience this kind of energetic, creative freedom. And I can experience it myself and express it myself, and also receive the expression of others that are doing the same thing. And it's very, very inspiring on many, many levels. So I go back every year. Generally now it's for the community and for my friends. A lot of my closest friends, I only ever see them at the burn because we live in different parts of the world. But because of the intensity of the experience, because there is a certain vulnerability, coming back to what we spoke about earlier in terms of going on safari and feeling like you're not in control. When you're at Burning Man, dust storms can whip up at any time. The weather can be bad. 70-mile-an-hour winds can come. You always got to have your dust masks and your goggles, and you got to kind of be prepared. There's this element of surrender to the elements on top of creative freedom and expression, on top of this manifestation of what I believe are the kind of these sort of universal principles that play with one another. And to be swimming in that for a week is really, really inspiring and rejuvenating. And I it's kind of like I sort of treat it as my new year. I don't really do much of a actual new year. I normally just spend an evening by myself meditating and stuff, or just spend it with my wife quiet. But the burn is the big celebration sort of end of year for me. And I come back from it. Sometimes like with the Jennifer Lopez album cover, that was very much a direct influence from Burning Man. I saw the sculpture. It was this egg made of mirrors, and I came up to it at sunrise, and the sun was glistening over it, and I saw this like shimmering light, and J.Lo wanted lots of shimmery, this iridescence on her album cover, and I was directly influenced. So it does have direct influence, but it's more a general sort of artistic, energetic influence for me that I really revere and respect, and I've been 12 times, and I'll just keep going.
So you'll be back next year then?
I think so, yeah. Unless something else better comes up. Unless there's a better party to go to, I'm not sure. Because if there is a better party somewhere on the planet, I better know about it, or I want to know about it. Because right now, the best party on the planet is Burning Man for that week. If somebody knows anything better, please let me know.
You pretty much have left the world of commercial photography behind. Is that correct?
I would say that's pretty true. Yeah. Yes is the answer. Yes.
That happened around 2018.
2018 is when I started expanding beyond the lens. I would say the departure from commercial photography has probably happened in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. It's a gradual process. It's not like I was like, no, I'm not taking any more jobs. It's just my focus is now somewhere else, and I'm not marketing myself as a photographer, and I'm not promoting myself as a photographer. So, there comes a point where I'm like, well, but as a result, I'm not really doing any commercial work anymore. And that's exactly where I want to be. I wanted to get out of the commercial photography for some time. And I would say I've finally crossed the bridge.
Well, so what made you want to get out of commercial photography? Just like a burnout, or?
A couple of things. I think the way that photography has been so democratized, the industry itself, the photographic industry, has been disrupted. That's nobody's fault, and it's nobody owes anybody anything, and it's just the way it is. So it's a very, very different industry now. There's a lot more photographers out there. I don't think the art of photography is as valued as it was in the past. I remember in the 90s, the only place you would really ever see great photography would be on a billboard, if it was a great ad campaign, in a photo book, in an exhibition, or in a magazine. Now it's just we're inundated and it's become a little bit more commodified and disposable. I think the process of living through that obviously had an effect, and I knew that I had something more to say, and I wanted to challenge myself again creatively. I got to the point where, as much as I love photography, and I'll always love photography, and the act of being on a photo set and shooting, I'm absolutely in my element. It's an incredible experience. I just think it's not as valuable as it was. And a lot of the time in the most recent years when I've done photo shoots, it's like, well, this is for a website banner, and this is for social media. And, there's not that object that you would get in your hand anymore. I remember back in the day, you would shoot an album cover and the record, the LP would come out. You're holding an object of art in your hand. Now it's a tiny little thumbnail on a Spotify screen. It's just not the same. So on that note, I knew that I wanted to challenge myself again. I hadn't felt like I'd been creatively challenged for about a decade or so. And, painting was something that I did in my youth a lot. And I wanted to do something that was more meaningful to me, more authentic to who I am as a person, and create something that is irreplicable. I didn't want to be shooting digital and then just have it like, I want to create something that is a unique work of art. Yeah, I probably got a little bit jaded, I think, and I didn't feel like I was getting challenged creatively enough. I think a lot of the style was like, oh, we just wanted to look like the person next door shot it, because a lot of the social media stuff has got that kind of vibe to it, and there wasn't this like this reverence of the elevation of beauty. And another thing that really kind of eked me out a little bit, and was always a little bit of a thorn in my side throughout my career, is I felt like I was part of a problem and not really part of a solution. And what I mean by that is that, with the advent of Photoshop, the aesthetic became just like too retouched, man. It's like too retouched. And it sort of takes the soul out of the picture a little bit. And it's putting out these unattainable standards of beauty and how people should look. We're so influenced by the images we see and the symbols that we have around us every day. And nowadays, I think we're exposed to something like 6,000 images a day or something like that. Ridiculous. It's some ridiculous number. And if every image is, a picture of Kylie Jenner, who's a beautiful woman, but like she's just too perfect on the billboard. It's just, and then you have all this thing happening with social media and with advertising, all this like depression with young girls. And, I was there doing a lot of beauty campaigns for cosmetic companies that ended up with influencers, and the pictures were too retouched, and I just didn't feel like I was providing anything of noble value anymore in terms of the trajectory of society. And it wasn't fulfilling me. And I wanted to do something that was more fulfilling. And this is really grounded in my own experience as a kid, because my mother, as we've spoken about, was a pretty big model in South Africa, in a very, very small pond, but she was pretty well known there, and a very, very beautiful woman. And as a single child and as a single mom, I got to see behind the veil of the psychology of a beautiful woman through witnessing my mother. And I saw her in so much pain and torment so much of the time, because so much of her identity was wrapped up in her physicality and her beauty. And it had an effect. It did have an effect on me. On the one hand, I became a photographer as a result, but on the other hand, it was like this, people don't look like this. People shouldn't look like this. If that model or celebrity that you're seeing on the billboard when you're walking through the airport came to life and stepped off that billboard and walked up to you, it would freak you the hell out. It would, because they look like an alien. It's just like this perfect person. They don't look real. They call this the uncanny valley in movie making. It's called the uncanny valley. It's the closer something of a special effect or gets to reality, the more we don't believe it. In other words, there has to be that element of disbelief for us to buy into the character. Otherwise, it just like ekes us out. So I just got to the point where I was just a bit like, there's more. I want to say more. I have more to say. I want to create something of intrinsic value. I want to challenge myself creatively. I've been doing this for 20 years. I love it. I don't want to stop doing photography. I just don't want to be doing it to sell somebody else's product, somebody else's image. I mean, I don't want to say universal no's. Like if an artist a musical artist or a great celebrity wants to do a collaboration with me, I'd be certainly open to that. But I'm not collaborating as an artist, not as a commercial photographer. I'm using my talents and my creativity and everything that I am. I'm not using it anymore to sell somebody else's product. I'm doing it to create something that is of intrinsic value to me and more meaningful to me, and put a point of view out into the world that actually means something to me. And it's something that I want to explore and keep going for many, many years to come, probably till the day I die, because I finally come to the point where I'm like, this is what it's all about right now, is creating the art. And there's a big difference, I think, between a craftsman, which I believe a commercial photographer is, as much they could bring a lot of artistry, but ultimately you are creating a product or a work of art or an image, shall I say, creating an image that has a purpose to sell something or to of a certain message, etc. And as an artist, it doesn't. The only purpose is the purpose that I give it, and that's the difference. And I'm ready for that challenge, and I'm ready to say what I want to say, and I'm ready to create works that are in a response to the unattainable, overly retouched images of beauty that have created, I think, a problem in our society, and certainly a problem with young people and how they get influenced by the images that they see. And I want to be part of a solution, or at least part of an inquiry into people that experience my art having hopefully opening up a more authentic experience of their own humanity and humanness as a result of witnessing my art, as opposed to feeling not sufficient enough by seeing one of my retouched beauty pictures. And that's the difference. That's why I'm pursuing this with full force right now.
That's beautiful, man. I mean, I just love that, because now you're really touching your authentic self. You're, like you said, you're bringing purpose to it, and that's beautiful. Yeah.
It's challenging. It's challenging, and also, I mean, there's all these like secondary things, like, I get to set my own schedule now. A lot of the times when I was a freelance photographer, I wouldn't be able to make a plan because I didn't know if I was be in London next week or Paris next week or be back in New York or shooting here. It's very difficult to know where you are. And now I set my own schedule. I've got to the time of my life where I want to stay healthy. I want to get a good night's rest. I want to show up for the work in primed emotional state. I want to do the best work I can possibly do and be on this creative challenge and inquiry and exploration. The feelings that I feel now when I'm in the art studio are the same feelings I felt when I was doing the Elephant Boy and Dutch magazine back in my late 20s, at the beginning of my photographic career, as I have those same feelings of the beginner's mind. And that it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be, and it's a wonderful place to exist. And I'm very grateful I can get to experience that in my middle age.
Now that you're fully engaged and have made this transition into this mixed media work, talk about what you call these masterpieces, is what I would call them. Talk about what you call these and the process, what it's all about.
Well, it's kind of quite complex. The foundation is a photograph, essentially. So as I said, I haven't dissed photography. I'm still very much, and now I'm a mixed media artist, and the artwork has its foundation in photography. Well, firstly, I would say that I coined the process Lumadynamic Decomposition. I create what I call these lumascapes. It's this photographic image that I get to create now for the art. Right now, I'm working on a series. I call them, it's a kind of a working title at the moment, like Body Stacks. I've been photographing people like on top of each other on pedestals and in different compositions. And essentially, I would do the shoot for this series. I've done a couple of shoots for the series. So I get to experience all the beauty of being the photographer. I'm in the studio. I've got my subjects, and I've got some hair and makeup, and I've got my lighting, and I've got music going, and I'm in this collaborative dance with my team, and I'm the photographer. But now I'm shooting for me. Isn't that great? I'm not shooting for a product. Yay! So I can call the shots. I'm the art director. I'm the artist. Yeah. So I do the shoot, And then after the shoot, I look at these images. And then right now, for this particular series, I am using Photoshop to layer different images over each other in certain compositional layering. And what that does is it creates a lot of complexity, and it also creates a lot of deformity. And that a lot of the time is happening. So a lot of the time, two faces would be over each other. So there's like two noses and three eyes. One face is slightly turned. What ends up happening is you kind of get this amalgamation of body parts and faces, and it just becomes this complex kind of grotesque commentary on the human form. It's not perfect by any means. I don't do any cosmetic retouching at all, but I do use Photoshop to layer these images over each other. And then I would print this image big. There's one behind me at the moment. It's about 8 feet by 4 feet, maybe even 8.5 feet by 5 feet. I print it on canvas. And now I am in the process of turning this into a mixed media artwork. What I love about the process is that I've been in this collaboration with my team and my subjects to create this photograph, this lumascape that I call it. And what's interesting about that is that when I'm in the stage now where I'm just about to start applying paint and painting on this, is I'm not painting on a blank canvas. I'm painting on a photograph, which is a result of a collaboration. It's the result of this dance. It's a result of all these relationships that I've experienced on set and in the production up to the shoot day. My subjects are influencing me. I'm influencing my subjects. There's this dance and this relationship, and it produces this result, this lumascape, of which now I am now confronted with in the solitude, except for my art assistant, in the solitude of my art studio. And when I'm looking at this, I'm asking myself, how do I break into this lumascape with paint? What can this become? Where can I take this? How can I integrate this where it becomes something more than a photograph and more than a painting? And it's an interesting process because now I'm in direct relationship with the result of the product of all these other relationships from the photo shoot. And every time I am picking up the brush and I'm making a mark on the canvas, on the lumascape, I'm generally destroying part of the image, which is where the decomposition comes in. But through the process of the destruction of the image, new content starts emerging. And a lot of the time, or so we say most of them, pretty much all the time, I don't know where it's going to go. I might have an inkling or kind of an idea, but I actually don't really know. And in order to do this well, it requires me to show up in full presence and completely in the moment, because there's another relationship that's being explored now in the process of painting on these lumascapes. I am now in relationship with an image that I've created that's now in relationship with me. And it's like, how do I dance into this image with paint and brushstroke? What am I going to bring out? What's going to emerge? What's going to be interesting? What's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. So it's like showing up to this process that each one becomes this journey, because I get so deep into the imagery that it completely sort of consumes me in every way. I fall asleep and I see the image. I wake up and I see the image. I sit in my art studio at night after a painting session and I'm just looking into this image and seeing what it could become, trying to see form where it didn't exist before, bringing things out. And I want to create something that is beyond the photograph and beyond the painting, into this mixed media. And with this particular series, my goal is for somebody to have a more authentic experience of their own humanity as a result of looking at it, because there's a lot of grotesqueness that ends up happening as a result of the painting and the double exposures. But it's through the process that I believe I am creating something that is actually more beautiful than a retouched photograph for a beauty campaign. or a magazine cover. It's more beautiful because it's more authentic, and it's more vulnerable, and it's just more meaningful. It's more meaningful to me, and hopefully more meaningful to those that view the work.
Yeah, these are stunning. Todd's got Nietzsche's Goddess up, and wow, it's amazing. Can you talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, it's I painted that in my studio in Miami. My wife is my muse, so it's my wife in there, and another muse, another two muses of mine. And it was towards the end of the shoot, and I saw the pedestal in the shoot. I was like, I'll just climb on the pedestal and just move around, and I got these images. This was actually the first of the body stacks. And then when I was looking through the photography, I was like, what if I layer them over each other? And I was like, oh my God, this is really interesting. It kind of looks like a sculpture. It's very sculptural in its general form. And I printed this one about 8 feet tall, and started breaking in with paint and just showing up for the process. As I said again, I don't know where it's going to go, and that's what's so exciting about it. A lot of the time with photography, I kind of knew exactly how to get there. I could see the image in my head already. I'm like, and I just got to just go through the process. Well, what's great about this is I don't know where it's going to go. It's always interesting where it ends up, but it doesn't really ever surprise me, because I know it's going to end up somewhere cool. As long as I keep showing up for the process in the right frame of mind, and with the right sense of immediacy, and the right emotional state, so that when I'm painting on these images, there's something that's happening beyond my preconception of what it may become. It's like I have to sort of open myself up to being of the moment, and seeing where inspiration strikes, and then acting upon that immediately in the moment with a brushstroke. So this piece, I think, turned out exceptionally well. I think it's just the composition, the color palette, the parts of the photograph that I've decided to leave, other parts that I've decided to destroy, and how through the painting process that you kind of, I achieve this disfiguration, this morphing of body parts. And I just think it creates for some really interesting work. And every time I look at it, I always see something new. And that's what I would hope that the viewer gets to experience, is that these paintings keep giving the more they look at it. And depending on the frame of mind, they can see something different and something new in it every time they look at it, because of the complexity that's in there. But yet at the same time, there's also a sort of an overall compositional simplicity that's pleasing, and beautiful to look at. Although it's very grotesque in a lot of it, I find it interesting to find beauty in the grotesque, or to find the grotesque in the beauty. It's an interesting paradox to play in.
Kind of like Francis Bacon.
Yeah, actually, he would be one of my inspirations. Francis Bacon, Gerhard Richter, Sargent. These are my inspirations as painters.
Picasso.
Yeah, I would say definitely a bit of Picasso in there too. I mean, I think what's interesting about Picasso is, the whole Cubist movement is, it's talked about in some of the art history books, is that they were painting a sense of time, because it's kind of like sort of the multiple exposures, but in paint. And this is the same kind of thing. It's really a inquiry into time, into time in terms of the creating of the photo shoot, and also painting itself is a recording of time in the immediate. When I take that brush and I load it up with paint and I make that action is now recorded in the brushstroke in that immediate moment. And I think that's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful aspect of painting. And painting also, has to be said, I think, is the oldest form of art known to mankind. As the earliest signs of mankind and civilization was early rock paintings. Right. So it's a wonderful exploration to use one of the most recent forms of art, which is photography. It's only been around for a little over 100 years, and then Photoshop, and then the technicalities around that, and then using this ancient artistic process and fusing it all together and having these two mediums sort of buttress up against each other and clash up against each other in the canvas. And that's where inspiration strikes and beauty happens, is when these two mediums sort of start reacting and responding to each other. And my job as the artist is to steward that process and sort of midwife the process between these two very different mediums, to try and create something beyond the sum of its parts. And to create something that's beautiful and keeps giving to the viewer every time they look at it.
Yeah. So it says mixed media acrylic. Do you always use acrylic, or have you practiced with oil as well, or is it just acrylic?
I have not done oil. It's certainly something that I'm going to be exploring in 2024. The drying times with oil can be a little restrictive in terms of this particular process, because there's a lot of layering that happens with these paintings. And if I would have to wait for the oils to dry, it would take weeks and months to do these works. Right now, it takes about anything between a month to 2 months of solid work to create one of these. And I think it would just extend that out into years.
Right.
So I had a chat with my art assistant this evening about it. I'm like, I really want to start experimenting and doing some tests with some oils, because I think that process is going to reveal something that will surprise me and be interesting and have its own quality to it, which I think will be very interesting to explore. And that's the beauty of where I am in my artistic endeavors, is that I was a photographer, and I've certainly got a lot of provenance, but there's a lot to be done in the art world, and a lot to be done in terms of my art, and this is just the beginning. And acrylic was the obvious choice for this process, and I'm sort of deep in the acrylics right now, but definitely will be expanding the palette into oils, and I'm super excited to see how that's going to turn out.
The acrylic has to, well, when you're painting over these, they have to be somewhat translucent, right? Or not?
Yes. I mean, it's a multi-layered process. So when I'm faced with the raw Lumascape, the first layer would be a lot of glazing, which is super translucent. And a lot of the time in that process, I am changing the hue. I am setting my darkest point in the painting. I might be. I never use black, but I will set the darkest darks and just start getting a feel for it, because in this process, as you know, I'm not approaching a blank canvas every time. I'm approaching this artwork kind of halfway through already.
Right.
So there's this relationship that is unique to this particular Lumascape, and the next Lumascape will have its own unique relationship. The first round of glaze is really getting a feel for it, getting a sense for it. A lot of the time I will be doing it on smaller test prints, just to kind of, as I said, get the feel for it. That is translucent. And then as I build up the paint, it becomes more and more opaque. And I wish you could see these in person, because there's a fair amount of impasto on that too. And there's that actual third dimension of the impasto that has a very important play and element when you experience these works in person. So what I'm trying to do here is really create a lot of depth and start breaking the plane of the canvas with the impastos, and pushing things back and bringing things forward. And it's many layers, glaze, and then I would go in and sort of join body parts and destruct something, and then another round of glaze, and then some impastos, and then another round of glaze. And it just keeps building and building and building until I don't know what to do anymore that could make it any better. And that's kind of when I abandon the painting, because I believe the painting is never finished. You just have to decide when to abandon it.
These are brilliant. I've never seen anything like it. It's so unique. Yeah, I'm over the moon.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
I love the fact that, the foundation is photography, but you're just taking it into a whole other dimension with, the layering and the paint.
Yeah. It's not new painting on photographs. I mean, Gerhard Richter did it. John Baldessari's done it. But when I look at those works, I haven't seen that much that appeals to me personally. I mean, I certainly get its relevance in terms of the culture of the arts, etc. A lot of the work that I've seen that have used this mixed media, would be like the energy of the paint is very much in contrast with the energy of the photograph. For example, like a 1940s film noir black and white shot of like Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe, going to the Oscars or whatever, and then there'd be a big red of splotched paint over her face and a big blue splotched paint over his face. And that's a certain commentary on it. But this is very different. This is more how to integrate it and midwife this and birth this into something that I certainly hope is unique. And I mean, it's certainly unique for me. I haven't seen anything like it. And that's really exciting. But it's very much going deep into the image of the photograph and deep into the process of painting and seeing what emerges, what content emerges as a result of showing up to that process, to this process.
Now, we know in talking with you and what I've read, you've been painting since you were a kid, but you said that you actually hired somebody to work with you that is also kind of guiding you in this exploration. Is that correct?
Well, when I started in 2018, I'd done a photograph of Willow Smith. That's the daughter of Will and Jada Smith, for the cover of Essence magazine. And on the side, I shot this straight up portrait. And I was bored one night and I wanted to explore. So I started splashing paint on these prints I made in my little Epson printer. It was very small, 22 inches by 17 inches. And, there I was in my studio thinking, okay, I'm going to create something cool. And I started throwing paint around, and I realized that I really had no clue. Everything that I learned in my teenage years, I'd forgotten, and I just didn't know what to do or how to do it. So I was like, well, how do I get around this? I found an art teacher, and I was like, come stay with me for a couple of weeks, and I'll pay you, and show me the paint, show me the art, show me how to do this, show me some techniques, give me a way to start. And she did, and she came and gave me a couple of weeks of just painting sort of with me and showing me different things and stuff like that, and sort of set me on my trajectory. So again, it's the beginner's mind, and not being afraid to be a beginner, not being afraid to learn, and I believe you're either learning or you kind of dying, and I just want to always keep learning. So yeah, that's set me on that trajectory, and now I'm very much in the painting process. I mean, I've been studying it intensely for a couple of years now, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm ready to start exploring the oils too, because I feel I got the acrylic down. When you have these canvases printed, the base, the photography, are these printed all grayscale? No, they're not. No. Okay. Yeah, it's generally desaturated. It's pretty desaturated, but it's not grayscale. I have done some grayscale stuff, and I think it'd actually be a pretty interesting study to do just purely grayscale. It might be a really interesting study to do. So maybe there will be a grayscale black and white series coming out at some point. But no, generally pretty desaturated, but there is a sense of color. And the reason being is that if it comes out too highly chroma and too much color, then when you're painting on it now, a lot of the time you're kind of dealing with too much information that's coming through, and there's not enough space to express yourself with the paints. So yeah, there is definitely color in it, but I would say it's about 50% desaturated. And then I bring the color in with the glazing and the paints and so forth. Yeah, spectacular, man. Yeah. I'm going to pull up this other piece that I really love. And this is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's a unique one, that one. Yeah. So you had the opportunity to photograph him at some point? Yeah, I did. It was a very special experience. I bet. Yeah. Now, in saying that, he didn't sit for me. So he didn't sit for a portrait. I went to India with Tibet House last year. It was with Robert Thurman, who's the father of Uma Thurman. He is the quintessential Western scholar of Buddhism. I think he helped translate the Tibetan Book of the Dead, etc. He was a monk back in the day. He's known the Dalai Lama for 60 years. And I went on an expedition to Dharamsala with Tibet House and Robert Thurman. And as the photographer in the provenance that I had, I said, look, it would be great if I could photograph him. They didn't give me permission for him to sit for me, but they did give me permission to bring the camera into the room. And that's very unique. That normally doesn't ever happen. So I was able to bring the camera in. There was an audience of about 20 of us, and he spoke to us for about 2 hours and had a good laugh. And I was able to photograph him. So these are more sort of fly on the wall pictures, but I wanted to create a work of art from this. And, this is not my usual subject matter, so to speak, but because he's such an icon, I really wanted to do something special and created this particular work is about 9 foot wide by about 5.5 feet high. So it's a really big piece, and it was sold to a private collector in Miami, and it's sitting on the wall in a beautiful penthouse in Miami right now. But yeah, it was a very sacred experience painting this, and I didn't really go too much into the grotesque because of who he is, and I wanted to maintain his likeness. But that's why it's a pretty unique piece. A lot of the other solo work I'm doing, I actually destroy the likeness of my models, of my subjects. But this one, I kept the likeness because of who he is, His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. I can't even imagine what it's like up front and seeing it in person as big as it is.
Yeah, it's a pretty reverent experience.
Yeah,
I have to say. A lot of impastos, and all the photography is taken from the temples in Dharamsala. So everywhere we were walking around, I was shooting details, and some of the little Buddhas are taken from behind where the Dalai Lama sits when he's giving his audience, when he's sitting with his audience. And then a lot of the patterns are taken from the tablecloth that the Dalai Lama had over his table when he was talking. But the one interesting thing about this, talking about curveballs, is I had permission to come and shoot and be a fly on the wall, so to speak. But of course, when he shows up, he's got the microphone coming right in front of his mouth to amplify his voice in the small little room that we were. So I was like, oh my God, I can't have the microphone in every shot. So I had to go around the other side of his face and just capture. And a lot of the pictures I actually captured at the very end when he took the microphone off, and then he posed for everybody and blessed everybody. And I got a lot of the shots between shooting through the people as he was giving the blessings and having a little chuckle with his personal connections with each person that was part of the audience.
Yeah, I've heard he's got quite the sense of humor.
He does. He was the first thing he did was telling us about his escape at the age of, I think he was 16, and on the back of a donkey, and they were going up this mountain pass, and one of the monks, the inner circle monks, obviously turned around and said Tenzin, because his real name is Tenzin, said, "Look behind you, and that's the last time you're ever going to see your home again." And he told us that experience firsthand, and he was 16 years old, and then I think later that evening they came across some villagers, and they gave him a wig to put on his head to be in disguise, and he actually put that very wig on in front of us when we had the audience with him, and had a good laugh and chuckle, and he looked so ridiculous with this looked like a dreadlock wig, like big thick dreadlocks, and he was having a laugh, and then halfway through his talk, he stopped, and all the monks came out and served us tea, and he had biscuits and tea, and all the monks took the tea away, and then we carried on again. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. I mean, the guy's certainly tapped into something. He's been meditating hours a day since he was 4 years old. I mean, sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
When my wife was pregnant with our daughter, she had been in a car accident, and so she was going to a chiropractor. we've had seen for a number of years. And the first thing they usually do when we go to our chiropractor, they put you on those roller beds. I don't know if you've ever been to a chiropractor or not, but they set you on the roller beds, kind of loosen up everything in your back. And our chiropractor at the time, Dr. Ackerman, was very adamant that my wife be in this room with this other man that was in there on one of these roller beds. And after they took him back and he left the office, he told me, I really wanted your wife to be in that room with that man, being as she's pregnant, because that man escaped with the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
I wanted her to kind of pick up on his energy in that room. Actually, it's kind of giving me chills just talking about it. But so it's interesting talking about this, but his escape and all that, it brought back that memory of that experience.
Yeah. It was actually interesting on that trip. I became friends with one of the Buddhist monks by the name of Tenzin Priyadashi. And he runs the Compassion Institute at MIT. He's also an incredible scholar and comes from a Brahmin family in India and has got this incredible story. He's written his own book called Running Towards Mystery. And we invited him to Burning Man this year, and he showed up. So we had one of the Dalai Lama monks at Burning Man with us for a couple of days this year.
Wow.
It was great. Yeah, it was great. It was great to have him. And he was just like, wow, this is awesome. This is great. Like, wow. And then of course it rained this year, which is a big deal. But he was cool. He would wake up every morning at 3 a.m. and meditate and come have breakfast and take a ride around and check stuff out. And it was wonderful.
That's funny.
Yeah, that had been really fun to have that experience with him, right?
Yeah, we have a Dalai Lama monk in our camp. Like, what?
I want to pull up another one that I really like. This is the first one on your artworks page. Animus?
Animus, yeah.
Animus?
Animus.
Man, so much going on in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you go into these, obviously you're moving your models around, your wife and one of your other muses or whatever. Do you go into the photo shoot kind of knowing a little bit what you want as far as the foundation of it? Or is it just completely intuitive like you are when you're painting over it?
I do have a certain idea. And a lot of that has been informed by the paintings. So in the early works, when I was just throwing paint around and experimenting, I realized that what's kind of really nice in painting is parts of the body like the shoulders and the elbows and the wrists and the hips. These are these anatomical parts of the body where the bones kind of protrude through the frame a little bit, and they're just really interesting. So I position my subjects where there's a little bit more emphasis on that part of the body, and I like it when my subjects when there's like an element of touch, but I ask them to grip a little tighter so that when the fingers touch a thigh or something like that, you get the indentation and the tension where the skin kind of gets pushed in by the tip of the finger. So these are the kinds of things I look for now when I'm shooting. I'm also lighting it a little bit differently than I would. I'm not as focused on the beauty element as much anymore as I would be if I was doing a still picture straight to be shown as a still picture. So the lighting can be a little bit more dramatic, and certainly the angles can be more dramatic. I have found that really helps for good painting. This might not be such a good example of the angles, but going in with a wide angle lens and having much more distorted angles and shooting from way down low or way up high, these things where you get a real sense of perspective make for more interesting art. And this is certainly not how I would shoot a celebrity or something like that, because I want to make sure that the optics are putting them in the right proportions where they look their most beautiful and their best. But this is not the case when I'm doing the photography for the art. I can be a lot more extreme with the photography because this just makes for a more interesting painting. And I'm not doing it to make anybody look beautiful anymore. I'm just doing it to make an object of beauty. And there's a very big difference in that.
Yeah. Stunning, man. Stunning.
Yeah,
from the get-go, when you decided to explore this, did you know in your head that you wanted to work really large?
Well, I certainly wanted to break out beyond the realm, from the constraints of my Epson 800 printer, because it was this way too small. And I acquired an Epson 20,000 printer, which prints 64 inches wide, which is really wide, and can print 100 feet long if you wanted to. So it was really just saying, like, how big can we go? Well, we can go this big. Well, if we can go this big, then let's go this big. And but it takes a lot more time. It's a lot more labor intensive. And well, when I do a painting, and that's happened to me twice this summer, where I spent all this time in a big painting, and then at the end of it, once I've decided to abandon it, it was never finished. I realized that it's not good enough. Then that really hurts, because it's not a big piece and a lot of time, and I'm never going to show it to anyone because it's not the standard that I want it to be. But yeah, I think in art, size actually does matter to some degree. And I will have a variety of sizes, but because I'm doing it with photography as the base, I really try and avoid getting finicky. And if it's a small piece with such a complex lumiscape underneath, it would be a very finicky process. And that doesn't lend itself to the kind of expression that I want to express when I'm in front of these lumiscapes. I don't want to be finicky. I want to have more movement. I want to actually, I've always been a very physical photographer when I've been shooting. I'll always be, moving around a lot on set. A lot of the time I never shoot with a tripod. I like to try things from different angles. I'm very much like that when I'm in front of the canvas. I always have music going. There's always a bit of a dance, it's movement. I like to move from one side of the canvas to the other quite quickly. And if the pieces are a lot smaller, it doesn't allow me for that kind of expression. So the bigness really helps. I have two works that I'm working on right now, and they're probably 5 feet by 4 feet. But kind of the smallest I go at the moment is 40 inches by 60 inches. It's kind of that happy place where the painting is still large enough for me to have this kind of expression and this kind of movement that I like to have in my body when I'm painting, but and small enough to be placed on someone's wall, because the big pieces you're asking a lot to sell a huge artwork, because you're assuming that the person has a massive giant wall that they put it on, and most people don't. So.
Right.
Yeah,
so the sweet spot.
That's definitely a factor when you're talking about, who's going to buy the work, right?
Yeah.
Like how much space they have. I have a small house, so I don't buy big pieces, I have like one large wall. So that's where it'd have to go,
Yeah. But I think, a lot of the time the big pieces sell the small pieces too. So I will be doing small pieces. And in fact, what I'm looking into doing is painting big, and then cutting the painting up. Could be an interesting exploration, because you get the big gestural brush strokes, but then you only get a segment of it. I think that's kind of interesting, like what was beyond this segment. These are all things that I will be exploring in the future. But my preferred size is 8 feet high and 5 feet wide, because it's kind of life size. There's an element of scale that has to be taken into consideration with this kind of work. Is if a figure is larger than real life size, it has certain implications, and if it's smaller, it has certain implications. I try and keep it around life size if I can, within a few percentage points, 10% bigger or 10% smaller. I think it has more of an impact when you view the work, because it's kind of in the same scale as we see the world. And that's something that I certainly look at. And especially with the commissions that I do, I try and keep the scale as close to life size as I can, or slightly under, it changes the experience when you view the work.
Makes sense. You talked about success rate, and you've been exploring this for what, 5 years now?
Yeah,
essentially.
Mm-hmm.
What is that success rate, would you say?
Well, it would be a guess, because I don't ever market. I can say this summer hasn't been that successful, because I've been up in my studio here in Montana. I did two huge paintings, and when I was done, I was a bit like, it's just not good enough. It doesn't have what I wanted to have. It doesn't have the juice that I wanted to have. So I would mark those down as learning experiences. I don't really consider them failures, because each painting is such a journey that I learned so much from it, that I think some of the times the lessons you get from the failures are more valuable, because it makes you realize what works in the successes that you might not have realized if you didn't have the failures.
Right.
Absolutely.
So after these two failures, I'm looking at this new piece. I'm like, this is badass. It's epic, because I made sure that the elements that were in the successes were now fully present. But I would say I have a pretty high success rate, probably 60 or 70%, something like that would be the number I would pull out of the top of my head, although it would be difficult to quantify that. I try and reduce the the biggest gut punch, I think, when I do a painting that I don't want to show, is the time, because it's a lot of time that you put in, and you can't get the time back.
Yeah.
So I try and learn as much as I can, and I try and set myself up for as much success as I can by thinking the shoot through, by doing a great shoot, making sure I got great photography to work off. And then when I decide on a particular Lumascape, I will print maybe 2 or 3 smaller scale ones just to get the feel for it, and throw them up and be not so precious about it. And then I will print 2 to 3 large ones. And the reason I do that is because I have to paint knowing that I could mess up and it'll be okay. If I paint and I have this preciousness where I'm sort of, every brushstroke is so precious, and it's so I run the risk of losing the energy that needs to go into these works, and that energy has to have a sense of like, fuck it, this is going to be fucking great, and I'm going to just do what I do. And but the risk of doing that is you could do something and mess it up. And now, so I know that I always have another one I can do. And then as I go deeper into the Lumascapes, after I mess one of them up, they go quicker, because I've learned from the previous one, and I pull in elements that worked really well from the Lumascape that I maybe abandoned halfway through because it wasn't right, and I wasn't going in the right direction. But this element worked really well. That element worked really well. I loved the way this form took shape from the shoulder of this body and the hip of this body and the face of that body, and it's become this like really grotesque form that really worked well. I want to replicate that in this one, but do it better, and then take it even further again. So the process is really, I'm doing the same Lumascape a couple of times with the purpose of it resulting in a successful mixed media artwork at the end. So I think along the way, there's been all this testing and messing up and starting again, but it's part of the process, and that keeps me loose. It keeps me loose in the studio, and it doesn't tighten me up. And I certainly don't want to paint with tightness in my body. I got to feel loose and free and immediate, and I got to feel kinetic, and I got to feel that I'm expressing myself in the moment. And the way I do that is by creating all these test prints and having a couple of reserve Lumascapes, so I can start again.
What do you do with all the ones that
don't give Wes your address?
No, I'm not going to go dumpster diving. We joked about that about another artist because he says he just throws them away, and it's like, oh my god, we should go dumpster diving. But what do you do with all these prints?
I keep them.
Yeah,
I keep them. Yeah, I keep them. I just worked on a commission. This one I can't keep because I do these commissions. Something I do with my wife. We call them it's a Love Saint thing, because it's a commission that we create these bespoke works of art to commemorate love, essentially. So if a couple are deeply in love with each other and they want to have something on their wall that has that, I will come in and photograph them and then create a bespoke piece of work and sort of work with them, find out about their aesthetic and their vibe and do something that's unique specifically to them. So I've just done a commission for a couple in London, and the test prints, I started getting some chalk, some colored chalk, and just like drawing out some compositions. And then I'm looking at this piece, I'm like, oh, that is so cool. Like the chalk has just added a whole new element. I love it. It's so contemporary. It looks great. But this particular one I can't show. So, I don't ever throw anything away because there's always these little gems and tastes change. I might go back in 5 years' time and look at this and be like, actually, this piece, it wasn't right for then, but right now I can take it in this direction. And I think there's something interesting to that, is to kind of go back into previous works and look at them with a fresh eye. And in fact, I try and do that in this process that I'm in right now. Is I get to the point of the painting that I feel like I've kind of come to that point of completion, or decided that this is almost due for abandonment. And at that point, I put it away. And provided that I'm not missing the deadline for the commission, I'll put it away for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks. And then when the deadline's approaching for this particular commission, I'll pull it out again and put it up again and look at it and be like, okay. Because, when you're looking at it every day, sometimes you don't see all that it can become. And I think to step back and step away from it and come back with fresh eye. Most of the time when I've done that, just in one or two painting sessions, the painting has just gone up like a couple of notches in terms of quality and in terms of meaning for me and stuff. And so I'm excited to see what happens with this commission when I put it on the wall again and see, because it's just I try and do that with all of them. It's just a good practice for myself.
Have you been doing a lot of commissions? Is that
a fair amount? Yeah, a fair amount. I mean, a lot of this work I don't show because it's generally for very high net worth people, and because of my photographic background and my provenance, I get to. Well, when I say I, it's actually we, because this is something that my wife, Ariel St. White, she's an incredible songwriter, an incredible artist herself, and also a love and relationship coach, or at least that's what she was in a previous career. So it's important that we go in as a couple, because it creates a very safe space for the couple that we're photographing. Some couples just commission a painting of their muse, of their wife or their partner, and some want to be in there themselves. But we've done, the founder of Google and many super affluent folks, and it's a very sort of intimate space, because they could be just holding hands, or they could be in an embrace, or she could be wearing a beautiful gown. But we're creating this experience where the love that they have for each other is very much embodied in the moment. And we hold very, very impeccable space for that process. It's a very stripped down crew. It's not a big entourage of crew at all. Most of the time we're just shooting them in their homes. And the work is never to be seen commercially anywhere, because it's deeply personal for them, and generally they'll show it off to their friends, and it becomes an heirloom forevermore for the generations that follow for them. But it's a very unique process, and it's a very unique painting that we create just specifically for them to express their union and have this embodied bespoke artwork that is a symbol of their love. And it's just a beautiful process, and it's just wonderful doing this now, coming from the world of photography, where I was using all my talents and my time, my creativity to sell somebody else's product or somebody else's image. But now I get to use all this talent and creativity and time and energy and devotion to celebrate love and to create something where whoever commissions the piece feel a deeper reverence and appreciation and love for themselves and for each other as a result of seeing this beautiful artwork hanging in their home every day. So it's a beautiful process, and it's something that I would keep doing, but it's kind of like a secret process. It's not something I can really promote or market out in the world. It's just word of mouth.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool.
It's super cool. This commission that's happening now, I'm flying to the south of France to present it to them. They're getting married in the south of France. And
wow.
We get to present them with this piece of work the day before their wedding. And you know, I think it's just stunningly beautiful, and my hope is that they think the same, and that they just have this, you know, forever.
That's really spectacular.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience for you as the artist to do this.
Yeah, it is. It's quite a sacred experience, and it's very, very devotional. And I get to create art for love, man. It's like, I mean, geez, what a better way to do. I mean, nothing better, you know. And you know, and we charge a lot, and and it's wonderful, and they generally, you know, all our clients have been over the moon and blown away by it, and they send us messages, and you know, being like, oh, you know, we're looking at the painting and we just love each other so much, and it's just thank you so much, and every time we look at it, it just fills our hearts with appreciation, and I have so much more. It has a very specific function, and it holds a very specific energy, and we're so influenced by the symbols that we surround ourselves with. And if we have a beautiful artwork that is very unique to your specific relationship with your love, with your partner, and that shows that, I think it's only good. And even if you don't stay in that relationship forever, you have something to show and to have that appreciation. And what we appreciate appreciates. And I think it's beautiful. And not only that, but what's so beautiful about this is because of the photography aspect of it, is that the essence of our subjects, the essence of the couple or the muse, some have just commissioned the painting of the wife, is that her essence or the couple's essence is directly infused into the artwork through the process of photography. If I were to take a photograph of them and then paint on a blank canvas purely from the photograph, that essence is passing through my consciousness as an artist out of my hand onto but there's this process of photography which I get to steward, but the process exists outside of me. That there's photons that struck the body at that particular moment in time, that was recorded with this particular piece of equipment, that is directly transmitted into the canvas, that then now gets to be built and embellished and imbued with devotion and love and color and symbols. And you know, this one piece, she's playing him a piece of music, piece of classical music. She's a pianist. She's playing this very specific piece of classical music on their wedding day. And I asked to see the notes of that music, and I photographed those notes, and those notes are now part of one of the layers inside the painting. So that piece of classical music that she's been going to play for them is now embedded in the painting. And I did another one where the wife she's an incredible poet. So she wrote this poem about her husband, and I asked her to write it out in handwriting and photographed it and infused the poetry into the painting. You can't read all the words. A lot of them, they disappear into the paint and stuff, but the energy of it, the resonance is there. And it's so meaningful. It's so meaningful. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is I I'm doing this because I want to do something that's more meaningful to me and to those around me and to the people that commission the work. Where the Taj Mahal was built for love. It's the love of a king for his queen. This is it. This is like this. These are my mini Taj Mahals for those that want to commission. So it's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Outside of these commissions that you're doing, the other work that you can see that is for sale on your website, do you have...
Not all of it's for sale yet. But
not
yes.
all of it's for sale. Okay.
No.
I just see a lot of inquire.
Right. Yes. Inquire.
Do you have gallery representation? Do you have...
No, not at the moment. It's not something I certainly have that intention. I would say that this particular style of work has only come in the last year.
Okay.
I've been around the block too many times to know that you get one chance to make a first impression. And I want to know what I'm doing. I want to have a body of work that has legs to it, that is solid, that I stand by. And, I'm looking at having about 15 to 20 finished paintings before I even start looking for galleries, because I want to really go in as the highest place I can. I certainly have the social network. I certainly have access to all the best people in the art world, but I don't want to pull the trigger yet, because I have been in the art trenches for the last 5 years, working through this process and finding this aesthetic and this process and this style that I now believe is unique and interesting and meaningful enough for me to then take it into the world. So that's why I'm in my studio here in Montana and not engaging with the world. I'm just very much in the process of the art and just very much like swimming in it at the moment. And I'm avoiding as much contact with the outside world and socializing and networking at this point, because this is not the time for it. The time that I'm in right now is purely working with the art and devoted to making the best art I can possibly make. And until I'm feeling good about that, then I'll start approaching galleries. But yes, definitely a solo show would be the kickoff, and then in the meantime, we're doing these commissions that are keeping it all moving in the right direction.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Maybe in a year I'll be like, yeah, I've got galleries around the world. So we'll see. Yeah. I just know from when I started out in the photo industry, you just wanna go in on fire. And as I said, this particular style only has come in the last year. So I'm just really just following down the rabbit hole here and seeing where this could go first. And I think it's going somewhere. It certainly feels like it.
Yeah.
Man, this has been an incredible conversation and a real treat to spend time with you this evening. Anything else that you want to talk about before we leave off this evening or promote?
Well, I think we've talked about a lot. I mean, just, certainly my website, like you can find me on the website. You can find the art on the website. If you're interested in, a commission for a muse of yours or for your partner, your love, or relationship, just please contact us through the website. It's very much a case-by-case basis. We only have about enough space for about 8 to 10 of these a year. So please just inquire around that, and we'll take it from there. But I have to say it's been pretty unique conversations. Felt very conversational.
Good.
This is the most conversational podcast I've been on so far, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have.
Oh, it's been a blast. I just love your story, and I love what you're doing now, and I just can't wait to see how this continues to go. So we'll definitely be following you.
I'm excited to see where it's going to go myself. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. But again, just got to show up for the process, show up for the process. Time in the water. And that's where I'm at right now. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
I have one question for you before we leave off. And this is a question I've been asking a lot of the artists that we've had on. Do you have a motto or mantra that you live by?
Well, I've got quite a few. I would say the one that is very present for me at the moment, and this is the one that I do in my meditations in the morning, is just enjoy. Just enjoy. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to enjoy myself. And it's such a simple mantra. And it's very effective. So just enjoy is the one I'm using at the moment.
Fantastic. Saint, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking time away from your family and your work this evening to spend it with us. It's been a wonderful conversation. And as Wes said, I look forward to see how this continues and evolves. And I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you, Todd and Wes. Thank you. Thank you for the conversation, and onwards and upwards.
Again, remember to follow Saint on Instagram at Warwick Saint and check out Saint's stunning work at his website, warwicksaint.com. As always, you can find all this information and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenet Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.